The sky above Tokyo split open like a wound. It wasn't gradual. There was no warning from satellites, no quirk-based prediction from the country's precognitive heroes, no time for the Hero Public Safety Commission to activate evacuation protocols. One moment, the afternoon sun cast its ordinary light over the sprawling metropolis. The next, reality tore apart in a spiral of blue energy that swallowed the sky whole, and something stepped through. He was massive, easily 3 meters tall, his purple skin marked with lines that spoke of age beyond mortal comprehension. He wore golden armor that gleamed with alien metals unknown to Earth's science, and on his left hand, a gauntlet glittered with 6 stones of impossible color. Each gem pulsed with light that made the air itself shudder, as if the universe was holding its breath. Thanos of Titan surveyed the world before him with eyes that had watched galaxies burn. "Curious," he rumbled, his voice carrying across the sudden silence that had fallen over Shibuya. Cars had stopped mid-traffic. Pedestrians froze on sidewalks. Even the ever-present hum of quirk usage, the background radiation of this society built on superhuman abilities, seemed to quiet in the presence of something fundamentally other. Another world teeming with life, another world blind to the mathematics of its own extinction. He took a single step forward, and the street cracked beneath his boot. Across the city, alarms began to scream. In the gleaming tower of the Hero Public Safety Commission, screens exploded with data as sensors detected energy readings that broke every known scale. In UA High School, in where the next generation of heroes trained, Principal Nezu's ears twitched as emergency protocols activated. And in a small apartment where the #1 hero was supposed to be resting, Toshinori Yagi felt his phone vibrate with an alert that made his weakened heart skip a beat. The message was simple. Unknown villain class threat. All available heroes respond immediately. Threat level, unclassified. Unclassified. They only used that designation when their rating system had no category high enough. Thanos continued his observation, watching as the tiny beings below began their predictable panic. Some ran. Others pulled out communication devices, likely summoning their protectors. A few, he noted with mild interest, stood their ground, and he could see the telltale signs of biological mutation activating. Local defense mechanisms. How charming. "Your world has potential," he said to no one in particular, raising his gauntleted hand. The Power Stone pulsed violet. "But like all worlds, it suffers from the same terminal disease: overpopulation, resource depletion, the inevitable collapse that comes when a species refuses to accept limits." A girl no older than 6 stood on the sidewalk below, separated from her mother in the chaos. She stared up at him with wide eyes, her cat-like ears flattened against her head in fear. Thanos looked down at her, and something almost resembling pity crossed his features. "Do not be afraid, child. What comes next is mercy." The first hero arrived in a blur of motion. He was fast, faster than most beings Thanos had encountered in his long existence. The hero wore a costume of blue and white, and his legs pumped with supernatural speed as he closed the distance in a heartbeat. Ingenium, the speedster hero, had been on patrol 3 blocks away when the alert came through. "Villain!" Ingenium shouted, his engine quirk roaring as he launched a kick toward the giant's head. "You've made a mistake coming to..." Thanos caught his leg with his right hand without even looking. For a moment, Ingenium hung there, suspended in the Titan's grip, his engines still firing uselessly. Thanos turned his head slightly, examining the hero with the clinical interest of a scientist studying an insect. "Remarkable," Thanos observed. "Biological enhancement through genetic mutation. Your species has evolved unique mechanisms for survival." He squeezed just slightly, and Ingenium screamed as his armor crumpled. "But evolution is not enough." "It never is." He threw the hero like a discarded toy. Ingenium's body crashed through 3 buildings before coming to rest in a crater half a kilometer away. Emergency services would later report that only his reinforced hero costume had prevented immediate death. More heroes were arriving now. Wing Hero. Hawks descended from above, his red feathers deployed like arrows. Wash created massive waves of water that crashed toward the Titan. Mount Lady grew to her gigantic size, her 50-meter frame finally giving her the height advantage she was used to. A dozen other pros emerged from all directions, their quirks activating in a desperate coordinated assault. Thanos didn't move. He simply raised his left hand and the space stone flared blue. Reality bent. Hawk's feathers froze in midair, suspended in warp space. He washes water curved around Thanos in an impossible arc before splashing harmlessly to the ground. Mount Lady's massive fist phased through the Titan as if he existed in a different dimension entirely. The other heroes found themselves suddenly displaced, some appearing 100 meters away, others finding their attacks redirected back at themselves. "You call yourselves heroes," Thanos said, his tone almost conversational as he walked through their desperate attacks like a man strolling through rain. "You fight to protect, to save, noble aspirations." The reality stone glowed red, and the street beneath Mount Lady transformed into quicksand, dragging her down. But you fight against inevitability itself. This world has 8 billion lives. Your planet cannot sustain such excess. I have seen 1,000 worlds die from such arrogance. Hawks pulled his feathers back, regrouping for another assault. His keen eyes analyzed the situation with tactical precision. The unknown armor, the strange gauntlet, the impossible powers that seemed to violate every law of quirk mechanics. This wasn't like any villain he'd ever faced. This wasn't even like All for One. "All units," Hawk spoke into his comm, his usual casual tone replaced by something sharp with urgency. "We need heavy hitters. Get Endeavor. Get Best Genist. Get everyone." He paused, swallowing hard. "And someone contact UA. Tell them we might need the students." On his left hand, Thanos' gauntlet continued to pulse with the light of 6 Infinity Stones. He had arrived in this universe seeking what he always sought: balance through perfect, a random elimination. Half of all life snapped away in an instant, giving the survivors the resources to thrive. But first he needed to understand this world's champions, needed to see if any possessed the strength, the will, or the conviction to stop him. In the distance he could sense them coming, stronger presences, those with power that actually registered on his awareness. Good. This universe's mightiest heroes were answering the call. Thanos smiled. "Come then, heroes of this world," he called out, his voice carrying across the burning streets. "Show me if your ideals can withstand the weight of necessity. Show me if you truly have what it takes to be called champions." The Mad Titan had arrived in the My Hero Academia universe, and the greatest test these heroes had ever faced was about to begin. Endeavor arrived like a meteor. When the #1 hero descended from the sky, wreathed in flames so intense they turned the air itself into shimmering waves of heat. His Hell Spider technique lashed out, white-hot tendrils of fire that could melt through reinforced steel, and struck Thanos directly across the chest. The flames washed over the Titan's armor and dissipated like water on stone. "Impressive thermal output," Thanos remarked, not even bothering to brush away the scorch marks. 1,500 degrees Celsius, perhaps more. On most worlds, you would be considered a weapon of mass destruction. He tilted his head, studying Endeavor with those ancient, calculating eyes. "Here, you are merely the first." Endeavor's jaw clenched. He'd fought All for One. He'd battled high-end Nomas specifically designed to kill him. He'd earned the title of strongest hero through decades of brutal training and combat. And this thing was treating him like a curiosity. "Hawks," Endeavor barked into his comm. "Evacuation status? Ongoing, but civilians are everywhere. Shibuya's packed at this hour." Hawks was already in motion, his feathers carrying people away from the combat zone in groups of 3 and 4. "We need at least 10 minutes to clear a 1-kilometer radius." "You won't have 10 seconds, Thanos said calmly, and somehow his voice carried clearly over the chaos. He raised his gauntleted hand. The time stone pulsed green. Around Endeavor, the world stuttered. He saw Hawks freeze mid-flight, a civilian clutched in his feathers. Saw Mount Lady stuck half-submerged in the quicksand that had been asphalt. Saw every hero, every civilian, and every falling piece of debris suspended in perfect stillness. Only Thanos moved freely, walking through the frozen tableau like a curator in a museum. "The time stone allows me to view all possible futures of this encounter," Thanos explained, moving between the paralyzed heroes. "I have already seen every strategy you might employ. Every combination of your quirks, every desperate gambit. He stopped in front of Endeavor's frozen form, studying the #1 hero's snarling face. In 14,605 possible futures, you lose in all but one. Time snapped back into motion. Endeavor stumbled, his mind reeling from the sensation of being trapped outside causality. But his body responded on instinct. Prominence burn activated, and a massive blast of concentrated hellfire erupted from his fists. The Power Stone flared, and Thanos caught the flames in his bare hand. The energy that could vaporize buildings compressed into a small sphere of purple light, then simply ceased to exist. "The others are coming," Thanos observed, looking toward the horizon. "I can feel them, the strong ones, those who carry the weight of this world's hopes." He clenched his fist, and the Power Stone's energy rippled outward in a shockwave that sent every hero flying backward. Good. Let them all witness what comes next. At UA High School, the emergency meeting had already begun. Principal Nezu stood before a holographic display showing real-time footage of the Shibuya battle. His usually cheerful demeanor had been replaced by something cold and calculating. The expression of a being whose intelligence far exceeded human norms, and now focused entirely on an impossible problem. "Analysis," Nezu stated, his paw gesturing to the frozen frame of Thanos, catching Endeavor's flames. "This entity demonstrates abilities that violate every known principle of quirk mechanics. Spatial manipulation without physical contact, time alteration on a localized scale, energy absorption beyond any recorded limit, and most troubling," he zoomed in on the gauntlet, that device on his hand, 6 distinct energy signatures, each one reading at levels that our instruments classify as measurement error, because they exceed theoretical maximums. Azawa leaned forward, his capture weapon already draped around his shoulders. Could erasure work? Unknown. If these abilities stem from that gauntlet rather than biological mutation, your quirk would be ineffective. Nezu's tail twitched, a sign of deep concern. "We're not dealing with a villain. We're dealing with something categorically different." Present Mike's usual enthusiasm was notably absent. "So what's the play? We can't just let the students—" "The students are our strongest assets," All Might interrupted. Even in his weakened form, Toshinori Yagi's presence commanded attention. Young Midoriya carries One for All at 45%. Young Bakugo and young Todoroki have combat experience against enemies that would challenge most pros. His sunken eyes fixed on the display. If Endeavor falls, they may be all we have. In the common room, Class 1A watched the news coverage in horrified silence. Izuku Midoriya's mind raced through everything he knew about villain tactics, hero strategies, yet quirk combinations. His notebooks, 23 volumes of hero analysis, had prepared him for countless scenarios. But this was something his analytical mind couldn't categorize. "That's not possible," Momo Yaoyorozu whispered, watching Thanos casually backhand Mount Lady through a skyscraper. The force required to move someone of her mass at that velocity, the durability to withstand Endeavor's flames. It's not just a powerful quirk. It's multiple quirks working in perfect synergy. "Like All for One," Shoto Todoroki said quietly. The name hung in the air like a curse. Katsuki Bakugo's fists clenched, small explosions popping against his palms. "Deku, you seeing this?" Izuku nodded, his green eyes locked on the screen. On Thanos' gauntlet, specifically, on those 6 stones that pulsed with impossible light, something about them felt familiar. Not in a way he could articulate, but in the way One for All sometimes gave him impressions of the vestiges who'd carried it before. "That gauntlet," Izuku murmured. "It's the source. It has to be. The way he uses it, the way he looks at it. It's not just a weapon, it's—" He trailed off because his analytical mind had reached a conclusion that his heroic heart refused to accept. "It's complete," Shoto finished, his own expression grim. "Whatever those stones do, he has all of them. He's operating at full power." On screen, Thanos raised his gauntleted hand toward the sky. All 6 stones began to glow in sequence. Purple, blue, red, orange, yellow, green. The air above Shibuya darkened as something vast began to take shape. "Citizens of this world," Thanos' voice boomed across every television, every phone, every communication device in Japan. The Space Stone was broadcasting him globally. "I am Thanos of Titan. I have crossed the barriers between realities, seeking what I have always sought, balance." More heroes were converging on his position now. Best Jeanist carbon fibers lashed out from a dozen angles. Ryukyu transformed into her dragon form, her massive body coiling for an attack. Mirko the rabbit hero launched herself forward with devastating leg strength, her kick aimed at the Titan's head. Thanos didn't even look. The reality stone glowed, and Best Jeanist fibers became flower petals. Ryukyu found herself suddenly shrunk back to human size. Mirko's kick connected with what appeared to be solid stone, but was actually warped space. Her leg passed through harmlessly, while the reflected kinetic energy sent her tumbling backward. "Your heroes fight bravely," Thanos continued, his broadcast uninterrupted. "But bravery is not strategy. Courage is not wisdom. You number 8 billion on this planet. Your resources diminish daily. Your conflicts multiply. I have watched 1,000 civilizations follow this exact path to extinction." He swept his arm out, and the reality stone painted the sky with images. Worlds burning, cities collapsing, billions dying not from war but from starvation, from environmental collapse, from the simple mathematics of unsustainable growth. "I offer mercy," Thanos said. "I offer balance. Surrender half your population willingly, chosen by your own criteria, and you and the rest will inherit a world of abundance. Resist." The Power Stone flared, and a shockwave leveled every building in a 3-block radius. Heroes scrambled to save the civilians buried in rubble. "And I will choose randomly, fair, impartial, inevitable." At UA, the teachers watched in growing horror as the implications became clear. "He's giving us a choice," Midnight breathed. "Submit to controlled genocide, or he'll do it himself." "He's insane," Mick said. "He has to be. No rational being would—" "He's completely rational," Nezu corrected, and the coldness in his voice made everyone turn. "That's what makes this so terrifying. His logic is sound. Overpopulation is a genuine crisis. Resource depletion is measurable fact. From a purely utilitarian perspective, having the population would—" He cut himself off, shaking his head. "Gee, but heroes don't operate on utilitarian calculus. We save everyone." "Can we?" Aizawa asked bluntly. The question hung unanswered. On screen, Endeavor pulled himself from the rubble, his costume torn, his flames flickering with exhaustion. Around him, Japan's greatest heroes lay defeated or struggling to rise. And Thanos stood unmarked, patient, waiting for their answer. "You have 24 hours, the Titan announced. "Gather your strongest, consult your leaders, debate your philosophy, then give me your choice." He looked directly at the camera, and for a moment it felt like he was staring into the soul of every person watching. "Or I will make it for you." The broadcast cut off. In the UA common room, Izuku felt One for All crackling through his body unbidden, responding to his surging emotions. Around him, his classmates were equally tense. Bakugo's palms smoking, Todoroki's right side frosting over, Ida's engines revving unconsciously. "They're going to call us in," Momo said quietly. "Aren't they?" No one answered. They didn't need to. 24 hours, one impossible choice. And somewhere in Shibuya, a being who had mastered infinity itself waited to see if this world's heroes would pass his test. The countdown had begun. The emergency summit convened in a bunker 300 meters beneath the Hero Public Safety Commission headquarters. Around the reinforced table sat what remained of Japan's hero leadership. Endeavor, his right arm in a sling, burns across his torso despite his fire resistance. Hawks, multiple feathers missing, his wings looking sparse and vulnerable. Best Jeanist, his costume shredded, Tona speaking through a voice modulator because Thanos' reality manipulation had temporarily affected his vocal cords. Ryukyu, Mirko, Edge Shot, and a dozen other top-ranked heroes, all bearing the marks of their 3-minute encounter with the Mad Titan. 3 minutes. That's all it had taken for Thanos to defeat Japan's finest. "Casualty report," the commission president said, her voice tight with controlled panic. She was a severe woman in her 50s, someone who'd coordinated responses to villain attacks, natural disasters, and even the paranormal liberation war. But Izuku could see from the footage being streamed to UA's Situation Room that this was beyond her experience. 17 heroes critically injured, an aide reported. 43 civilians dead from building collapses during the initial assault, just 372 injured. Ingenium is in surgery. They're not sure he'll walk again. The aide's voice cracked slightly. And that was with him holding back, ma'am. The footage analysis suggests he was testing us. Testing, Endeavor repeated, his voice like gravel. The number one hero stared at his bandaged arm, at the bruises where Thanos had simply grabbed him and thrown him through a parking structure. He wasn't even trying. Hawks leaned forward, his usual easy smile completely absent. I counted 6 distinct power sets: spatial manipulation, time alteration, reality warping, energy projection, enhanced physical capabilities, and something else. Something that let him know what we were going to do before we did it. He pulled up holographic footage on his tablet. Watch his eyes, he's not reacting to our attacks. He's anticipating them. The footage played in slow motion. Frame by frame, it showed Thanos moving with impossible precision, turning his head a split second before Hawks attacked from behind, raising his hand before Endeavor's flames launched, stepping aside from Best Genus carbon fiber trap before it was even sprung. Precognition, Edshot muttered, on top of everything else. That gauntlet, Ryukyu said, pointing at the freeze frame of Thanos' left hand. Everything stems from it. Those 6 stones, each one seems to control a different fundamental force: space, time, reality, power, mind, soul. She looked around the table. If we could remove it, we can't get close enough, Mirko interrupted bitterly. The rabbit hero had a leg in a cast, the same leg she'd used to attack Thanos. I hit him with everything I had. Ig Lunar Tiaras at full strength. It was like kicking a mountain that then kicked back twice as hard. The room fell into heavy silence. Finally, the commission president spoke. He gave us 24 hours to choose. Half the population, selected by our criteria, or he selects randomly. She looked at each hero in turn. Legally, ethically, practically, what are our options? We fight, Endeavor said immediately. With what? The president shot back. 17 hours ago, you were our strongest hero. He swatted you aside like an insect. All Might in his prime might have stood a chance, but All Might is still here, came a voice from the doorway. Everyone turned as Toshinori Yagi entered, his skeletal frame somehow radiating the presence he'd carried as the symbol of peace. Behind him walked Principal Nezu, and behind them, even in their hero costumes, came the students of Class 1A. This is a closed session, the president began, but Nezu raised a paw. With respect, Madam President, closed sessions are a luxury we no longer possess. The entity currently occupying Shibuya possesses power that renders conventional hero hierarchies meaningless. Nezu's eyes gleamed with cold intelligence. We require unconventional solutions. Endeavor's gaze locked onto his son. Shoto, you shouldn't be here. Neither should you with those injuries, Shoto replied evenly. But here we are. Izuku stepped forward, his legs shaking slightly but his voice steady. We've been analyzing the footage, all of us, and we think we might have insights. Insights, the president repeated incredulously. You're students, first-year students. This is the Infinity Gauntlet, Izuku interrupted, his analytical mind overriding his usual nervousness. He pulled out his newest notebook. Volume 24, started just hours ago, already filled with sketches and notes. That's what he called it in the broadcast. Those 6 stones represent fundamental forces of reality. The Space Stone for teleportation and spatial manipulation, the Time Stone for temporal control, the Reality Stone for matter manipulation, the Power Stone for energy projection, the Mind Stone for mental control. He hasn't used it yet, but I think he's capable. And the Soul Stone for something. Its function isn't clear. He approached the holographic display, his fingers trembling as he manipulated the images. But here's what's important. He uses them sequentially. Watch. He played the footage. When he stopped time, only the time stone glowed. When he threw Endeavor, only the power stone. When he transformed Best Jeanist's fibers, only the reality stone. Izuku's green eyes were intense with focus. They're individual tools, incredibly powerful tools, but he has to actively choose which one to use. Hawk sat up straighter. You're saying there might be a lag? A window between activations? Microseconds at most, Momo added, stepping forward with her own tablet. I've been running calculations based on the footage frame rates. The stones activate in approximately 0.03 seconds. But there is a gap, a moment where he's vulnerable. 0.03 seconds, Mirko said flatly. That's not enough time to... It is for me, Bakugo interrupted, explosions popping in his palms. I can move faster than that. So can Deku with his quirk. So can Ida with Recipro Turbo. You're children, the president said, but there was uncertainty in her voice now. We can't send children against... We fought a war, Shoto said quietly. Against Shigaraki, against All for One. We've seen our classmates die. We've killed to protect others. His heterochromatic eyes were hard. We're not children anymore. We stopped being children the moment society needed us to be soldiers. The brutal honesty of it silenced the room. All Might placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. Young Midoriya, what you're proposing, you understand the risk? I understand that every hour we delay, he gets more entrenched. I understand that he's giving us time to plan because he's confident no plan will work. Izuku looked up at his mentor, at the man who'd given him everything. Oui, but I also understand that heroes don't choose who lives and who dies. We save everyone. That's what you taught me. Even when it's impossible, Endeavor asked. Especially then, Izuku replied. Nezu climbed onto the table, his paws clicking against the metal surface. I propose a multi-layered assault. Phase 1. Evacuate all civilians within a 5-kilometer radius. No exceptions, no delays. Phase 2. Establish a perimeter with our remaining pro-heroes. Phase 3. He looked at Class 1A. Deploy our fastest, most adaptable combatants in a precision strike targeting the gauntlet. The students, the president said. The weapons we've trained them to be, Nezu corrected coldly. Make no mistake, I take no pleasure in this. But we created these children in our image. We taught them to fight, to sacrifice, honored to be the bulwark against impossible odds. Now we face impossible odds, and we're surprised they want to do what we trained them for? Hawks rubbed his face. It's still a suicide mission. Even if the kids can get close, even if they can somehow remove that gauntlet, he's still strong enough to demolish mountains without it. The gauntlet just makes him unstoppable instead of merely catastrophic. Then we make him stop himself, Momo said. She pulled up a chemical formula on her display. I can create compounds that don't exist in his universe. Sedatives, paralytics, neurotoxins, things his biology has never encountered. If we can inject him with enough foreign substances, we might slow him down. Might, Best Jeanist noted. It's better than definitely won't, Bakugo shot back. Endeavor stood slowly, his flames flickering back to life despite his injuries. If we're doing this, we do it right. Full coordination. Every hero we have left, every student who's combat ready. We hit him with everything simultaneously, overload his ability to choose which stone to use. And if it doesn't work, the president asked. The question hung in the air. Then at least we'll die as heroes, All Might said quietly. Not as bureaucrats who chose which half of humanity deserved to live. In Shibuya, Thanos sat in meditation among the ruins. The gauntlet rested in his lap, its stones pulsing in rhythm with his breathing. Around him, the evidence of his brief battle. Toppled buildings, cratered streets, burn marks where Endeavor's flames had failed to harm him. The local defenders had withdrawn, likely to plan their resistance. Good. He preferred when they fought. It made the lesson more profound. The Soul Stone pulsed and Thanos closed his eyes, letting its power wash over him. It showed him the truth of every living being in this reality, their fears, their hopes, their essential nature. This world was young, still learning the hard mathematics of survival. They had developed these quirks, these genetic mutations that granted superhuman abilities. Fascinating from an evolutionary perspective, irrelevant from a cosmic one. He had seen the strongest of their champions fall in minutes, had measured their power against the infinite and found it wanting. Yet something in their eyes, in their desperate determination, reminded him of what? His own people, perhaps, before Titan fell. Before he learned that mercy and sentiment were luxuries no civilization could afford. "They will come again," he said to the empty air, "the strongest among them, the young ones with fire in their eyes. They will believe they can succeed where their elders failed." The time stone showed him the futures, thousands upon thousands of potential timelines, branching and diverging. In most, the heroes fell within seconds. In some, they lasted minutes, their coordination buying them brief moments of hope before inevitable failure. In one, just one, a green-haired boy with power that tasted familiar somehow managed to touch the gauntlet. That timeline ended in a flash of light so bright even the time stone couldn't see beyond it. Interesting. Thanos opened his eyes and looked toward the horizon, where he could sense them gathering. The heroes, the students, the desperate and the brave. They would come with their plans, their quirks, with their unshakable belief that heroism could overcome necessity. "Come then," he whispered. "Show me if this world deserves mercy or oblivion." The Mad Titan settled in to wait, patient as extinction itself. The plan was elegant in its desperation. At 0400 hours, while Shibuya remained under mandatory evacuation, Class 1A gathered in a staging area 2 kilometers from Thanos' position. Around them, pro-heroes prepared for what many privately believed would be their final mission. The air smelled of ozone and fear. Izuku checked his costume for the 7th time, his fingers trembling as he adjusted his gloves. One for All crackled through his body at 45%, the highest he could sustain without destroying himself. It had taken him 2 years to reach this level. Against All for One, against Shigaraki, it had been enough. Against a being who could manipulate infinity itself, it felt like bringing a candle to fight the sun. "You're spiraling," Bakugo said, appearing beside him. The explosive hero's gauntlets were loaded with his maximum yield sweat, enough explosive power to level a city block. "I can see it in your face, that stupid muttering thing you do." "I'm not," Izuku started, then realized he had been muttering, running calculations, probabilities, outcome trees. None of them ended well. "Kachan, what if we can't—" "Don't," Bakugo cut him off sharply. "We've been through this. Overthinking is what gets you killed. You've got One for All. I've got explosions that can crack mountains. Icy Hot has fire and ice. We've got the entire hero society backing us up." He grabbed Izuku's shoulder, hard enough to hurt. "And we've got one advantage that purple bastard doesn't have." "What's that?" "We know how to lose." Bakugo's red eyes were intense. "We've been beaten down, broken, rebuilt, and beaten down again. Every villain we've faced, we've lost to first. Then we learn. That thing out there? He's been winning so long he thinks it's inevitable." A savage grin crossed his face. "Let's show him what happens when you underestimate heroes in training." Nearby, Shoto stood with his father. The conversation was quiet, tense with years of complicated history. "You don't have to do this," Endeavor said, and for once there was no demand in his voice, only a father's fear. "Yes, I do," Shoto replied. "Someone has to, and I'm strong enough." "You're 17. I'm a hero." Shoto looked at his father's injuries. Ina at the bandages covering burns that should have been impossible for a fire user to sustain. "You taught me that power is everything, that strength determines worth. Was that a lie?" "No, yes, Endeavor struggled with words that didn't come naturally. "I taught you wrong. Power isn't everything. Sometimes survival is winning. Living to fight another day is cowardice," Shoto finished quietly. "Against a normal villain, maybe you're right. But this isn't a normal villain. This is someone offering to commit genocide in the name of mercy. If we don't stop him here, if we run and hide and hope someone else solves this," he met his father's eyes, "then what was the point of any of it? The training, the pain, the effort to become heroes?" Endeavor had no answer. Across the staging area, Wayne Momo was briefing a team of support heroes on the chemical compounds she'd created. Vials of substances that existed nowhere in nature, neurotoxins designed based on xenobiological theory, sedatives that could drop an elephant in seconds, paralytics that targeted nerve clusters that might not even exist in Thanos' alien physiology. It's all theoretical, she admitted to Powerloader, who was examining her work with professional admiration. I'm extrapolating from what we know about quirk-enhanced biology and hoping some of it translates to extra-universal physiology. It's brilliant work, Powerloader said. If you weren't about to face possible death, I'd be recommending you for advanced biochemistry programs. If I survive, I'll consider it. The word if hung heavy between them, and Ida gathered his team, the speed-based heroes who would form the first wave. Resipro Turbo could give him bursts of incredible velocity, but only for short periods. He'd calculated that he had exactly 3 attempts before his engines would overheat. 3 chances to get close enough to matter. We are the distraction, he told them, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd learned leadership through loss. Our goal is not to defeat him. Our goal is to force him to use the gauntlet defensively, to create the opening that others need. This means we will be targeted. Some of us will not survive. No one flinched. They'd all volunteered. It has been an honor, Ida said simply. Hawks coordinated with the aerial team from a holographic display. His wings had partially regenerated. But he was operating at maybe 60% capacity. Still, he was the fastest flyer they had. Timing is everything, he stressed. The moment Thanos uses the Time Stone or Space Stone to defend against the Speedsters, his attention will be split. That's when Team Midoriya goes in from the opposite vector. You'll have maybe 2 seconds. Maybe. Izuku, Bakugo, and Shoto studied the tactical map. 2 seconds to close a distance of 50 meters, avoid whatever reality-warping defenses Thanos deployed, and somehow remove or damage the Infinity Gauntlet. It's impossible, Shoto said flatly. Yeah, Bakugo agreed. So we'll do it anyway, Izuku finished. All Might watched them from the command center, his heart breaking with pride and terror. These children, his children, in all the ways that mattered, were preparing to face a threat that had defeated him in his prime. The analysis team had been clear. Even at his peak, one for all at 100% wouldn't have been enough against the Infinity Stones. But perhaps one for all at 45%, combined with explosive quirks that could reach temperatures exceeding nuclear reactions, combined with ice and fire that could create localized extreme temperature differentials, combined with the coordination of heroes who'd learned to fight as one, perhaps that would be enough. Or perhaps he was sending them to die because he had no other choice. All teams, sound off, Nezu's voice came through the comms. The principal's usual cheerfulness had been replaced by cold calculation. He'd run 10,000 combat simulations, and they'd won in exactly 372 of them, a 3.72% success rate. In academia, that would be a failing grade. In war, it was the best odds they had. Team Alpha ready, Endeavor reported. He would lead the frontal assault, the obvious threat that Thanos would have to address. Team Beta ready, Hawks confirmed. Aerial superiority, or as close to it as they could manage. Team Gamma ready, Best Genius said through his modulator. Close quarters control, binding techniques, anything to limit mobility. Team Delta ready, Ida announced. The speedsters, the sacrifice plays. Team Omega ready, Izuku said quietly, and heard Bakugo and Shoto confirm beside him. The final gambit. The students who would either save the world or die trying. The sun was beginning to rise over Tokyo, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. It beautiful, Izuku thought distantly. He'd always loved sunrise, the promise of a new day, of hope renewed. If they failed here, there might not be any more sunrises, not for half of humanity. All teams, Nezu said, and something in his voice made every hero stand straighter. What you're about to do is beyond heroic. It's necessary. For weeks, we've debated the philosophy of heroism, whether we save people to satisfy our own egos, whether we're truly selfless, whether the hero system is corrupt. Today, we have our answer. He paused, letting the weight settle. True heroism is standing between the innocent and the impossible, knowing you'll lose and fighting anyway. True heroism is looking at a choice between genocide and extinction and refusing both. Whilst true heroism is being 17 years old and choosing to face a god, because someone has to. In the staging area, Izuku felt tears on his cheeks. Beside him, Bakugo's hands were smoking. Shoto's breath was misting in the cold air. "You are heroes," Nezu continued. "Not because society labeled you such, not because you have quirks or licenses or costumes, but because when the moment came to choose between impossible odds and surrender, you chose to fight." The comms crackled. "Plus Ultra," All Might said softly. The words spread through every team, every hero, every student. A phrase that had always meant going beyond, exceeding limits, becoming more than you were. "Plus Ultra," they roared back. "Execute," Nezu ordered. And the heroes of My Hero Academia went to war with infinity itself. Thanos sensed them coming before they breached the perimeter. The gauntlet pulsed warm against his skin as the Mind Stone detected hundreds of life signatures approaching with coordinated precision. Impressive. They'd learned from their initial defeat, adapted their strategy, committed their full strength. It wouldn't matter, but it was admirable. He stood as the first wave arrived. Endeavor came from the east, his flames white-hot with desperate fury. Best Genus from the west, carbon fibers already weaving through the air. Hawks from above, thousands of feathers forming a razor-sharp cloud. Mirko from the south, her remaining good leg charged with devastating kinetic force. "For Earth!" Endeavor roared, an unleashed prominence burn at maximum output. Thanos raised the gauntlet. The Reality Stone glowed red, and Endeavor's flames became cherry blossoms. Beautiful, delicate, and utterly harmless. They drifted around Thanos like snow. Best Genus fibers wrapped around the Titan's arms and legs, reinforced with carbon nanotubes strong enough to bind Gigantomachia. Thanos flexed, and the Power Stone pulsed. The fibers shredded like tissue paper. Hawk's feathers struck from 12 different angles simultaneously, each one vibrating at frequencies calculated to induce resonance in alien armor. The Space Stone flared blue, and the feathers phased through Thanos without making contact, appearing on the other side still moving at full speed. Mirko's kick connected with his jaw. For a moment, just a moment, Thanos' head turned. That was the signal. "Now!" Ida screamed, and 6 speedsters activated their quirks simultaneously. They came from every angle, moving faster than sound, their paths calculated to force Thanos to choose which threat to address first. The Titan's eyes narrowed as he raised his gauntlet. The Time Stone glowed. The speedsters froze mid-step, trapped in temporal stasis. Ida's face was locked in determination, one hand reaching for the gauntlet, his fingers millimeters away. "Predictable," Thanos said, and then Bakugo exploded out of Ida's shadow. The speedster had been a decoy, a carrier. Bakugo had used his explosions to propel himself at speeds even Ida couldn't match, hiding his heat signature behind the speedster's body, waiting for exactly this moment when Thanos was focused on the Time Stone. "Surprise, asshole!" Bakugo roared, and his gauntlets erupted with every ounce of nitroglycerin heat stored. The explosion was cataclysmic. It vaporized 3 city blocks, created a mushroom cloud visible from orbit, and generated temperatures that briefly exceeded the surface of the sun. When the light faded, Bakugo was embedded in a crater, his costume scorched, his body smoking. And Thanos stood unmarked, the Power Stone having absorbed the blast entirely. "Brave," the Titan acknowledged. "Foolish, but brave." He raised his hand to swat the boy aside. Ice erupted from the ground, flash freezing his legs to the street. Simultaneously, flames super hot enough to melt tungsten washed over his torso from the opposite direction. The temperature differential was extreme enough to crack diamonds. Shoto appeared from behind a collapsed building, his right hand blazing, his left hand trailing frost. "You made one mistake," he said through gritted teeth. "Dayton, what is that?" "You underestimated how much we've learned to hate losing." The ground beneath Thanos exploded upward, not from explosions, but from Ochako using her zero gravity on the foundation, while Sato used his sugar rush strength to physically punch the street from below. The Titan stumbled, off balance for a fraction of a second. Momo appeared, wielding a massive syringe filled with her chemical cocktail. "Your biology may be alien, but everyone has a nervous system," she struck, injecting directly into the gap where Thanos' armor met his neck. The Titan grabbed her wrist and threw her aside like a doll, but the damage was done. The sedative entered his bloodstream, racing toward his brain. Clever, Thanos admitted, and for the first time there was a slight slur in his speech. But insufficient. The reality stone glowed, and the chemical compound transformed into harmless saline before it could take full effect. "Everyone, now!" Izuku screamed, and then the real assault began. From every direction, every remaining hero and student launched their ultimate techniques simultaneously. Denki's indiscriminate shock, Jiro's heartbeat fuzz, Tokoyami's Ragnarok, Mina's acid veil, Kirishima's red riot, unbreakable ramming speed, Dark Shadow and Froppy, and Tailman and Sugarman, and every student who'd ever been told they weren't strong enough, weren't good enough, weren't hero enough. They came together in one desperate, coordinated, magnificent assault, and Izuku ran through the center of it all, one for all at 100%. His body screamed in protest as the power that had destroyed his limbs dozens of times before roared through his muscles. He didn't care. This was the moment, the only moment that mattered. Thanos saw him coming. The gauntlet rose, stones beginning to glow. Izuku didn't aim for the gauntlet. He aimed for Thanos' face and punched with every ounce of strength the greatest hero had ever given him. The impact created a shockwave that shattered windows 5 kilometers away. Thanos' head snapped back. For one perfect, impossible second, the Mad Titan staggered, and Izuku's other hand, the one he'd kept hidden, the one wrapped in Sero's tape and coated in Mina's acid, grabbed the Infinity Gauntlet and pulled. The Infinity Gauntlet didn't come off. Izuku pulled with everything he had, one for all at 100% channeled directly into his grip, his tendons threatening to snap, his bones creaking under the strain. The acid hissed and bubbled against the gauntlet's surface, Sero's tape providing just enough traction to maintain his hold. But the gauntlet was fused to Thanos' hand, not mechanically, not with straps or locks. It was integrated at a level that transcended mere attachment, the stones pulsing in rhythm with the Titan's heartbeat, as if they'd become part of his very biology. "Admirable effort," Thanos said, and grabbed Izuku's arm. The world exploded into pain. Thanos lifted the boy one-handed and slammed him into the concrete with enough force to create a crater 3 meters deep. Then again, and again. Each impact drove Izuku deeper into the earth, each collision sending shockwaves through his already damaged body. "No!" Bakugo screamed, launching himself forward with explosive propulsion. The space stone flared, and Bakugo found himself suddenly 5 kilometers away, his momentum unchanged, sending him crashing through an evacuated apartment building. Shoto tried to freeze Thanos' arm, to create some opening for Izuku to escape. The reality stone turned his ice into steam before it could form solid. All around them, heroes were falling. Denki's electricity harmlessly grounded out against the Power Stone's energy field. Tokoyami's dark shadow recoiled from the Soul Stone's light. Kirishima's hardened skin cracked under a casual backhand that sent him tumbling through rubble. "You fought well," Thanos said, still holding Izuku by the arm. The boy's costume was torn, blood leaking from dozens of wounds, his breathing ragged. "Better than most. You coordinated, adapted. It even managed to make me acknowledge your existence." He raised his gauntleted hand, the Power Stone beginning to glow with lethal intent. But well is not enough. It never is. "Midoriya!" All Might's voice cracked across the comms, stripped of all composure. "Retreat! Everyone, retreat now!" But there was nowhere to retreat to. Thanos had them exactly where he wanted them, scattered, exhausted, their ultimate gambit having failed. Izuku's vision was fading, darkness creeping in at the edges. One for All was still crackling through his body, but his arm, the one Thanos held, was broken in at least 4 places. He could feel the fractured bones grinding together, could taste blood in his mouth from internal injuries. This was it. This was how he died. Not against All for One, not protecting his friends from Shigaraki, but here, in a crater in Shibuya, held by a being who wielded infinity itself like a tool. "I'm sorry, All Might," he thought distantly. "I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough." And then something impossible happened. One for All responded. Not the physical power. That was already maxed out, already tearing his body apart. This was something else, something deeper. The quirk had always been more than just strength. It was the accumulated will of 8 previous users. Their determination crystallized into transferable power. And for the first time, Izuku felt them. Not as vague impressions, not as distant vestiges, but as presences, real and immediate, flooding his consciousness with their combined experience. "You're not alone," a voice said. The first user, the one who defied his brother. "You've never been alone. We've all faced impossible odds." In another voice added, the third user, whose name had been lost to time. "We've all stood against power that should have crushed us, and we all chose to fight anyway," said a female voice. Nana Shimura, All Might's master, grandmother to Shigaraki. "Because that's what heroes do." The vestige images appeared around Izuku, transparent, ghostly, but undeniably present. 8 previous users of One for All, their combined will manifesting in this moment of absolute desperation. Thanos noticed. His eyes narrowed as he observed the phenomenon with clinical interest. "Fascinating," he murmured. "Your power is not merely physical enhancement, it carries consciousness, transferable willpower." The Soul Stone pulsed, analyzing what it was witnessing. "You're channeling the determination of everyone who's ever held this ability." "Not just determination," Izuku gasped out, and somehow found the strength to meet Thanos' gaze. "Their hope, their refusal to give up, their belief that one person can make a difference." Blood dripped from his mouth, but his green eyes blazed with something beyond mere defiance. "You said you've seen 1,000 worlds fall, but have you ever seen one refuse?" For just a moment, something flickered across Thanos' face. Not quite surprise, not quite respect, but recognition perhaps, as if he'd heard similar words before, in another life, another universe. "Words are cheap," the Titan said. "Hope is a lie we tell ourselves to make extinction more bearable." "Then why give us 24 hours?" Izuku shot back. "Why the choice? If you truly believed hope was meaningless, you'd have snapped your fingers the moment you arrived." He coughed, more blood spattering his costume. "You want us to choose surrender. You want us to validate your philosophy. Because if we won't, if we fight anyway, then maybe..." Thanos' grip tightened, cutting off Izuku's words. But the boy had struck a nerve, and everyone watching could see it. "You know nothing of what I want," Thanos growled. "I am inevitable. I am scared," Izuku finished. "Scared that you might be wrong." The Power Stone flared to annihilating brightness. But before Thanos could unleash it, the ground beneath them erupted. Not with ice, not with explosions, with roots. Massive, impossibly thick roots of wood and vegetation, bursting from concrete and steel, wrapping around Thanos' legs, his torso, his arms. The Titan's eyes widened in genuine shock as he realized what he was seeing. This wasn't a quirk from any of the students. "Sorry I'm late," came a weak voice from above. All Might stood on the edge of the crater in his muscular form, a form he shouldn't have been able to maintain anymore, his time limit long since expired. Blood leaked from his mouth, his body visibly shaking from the strain. But he was here, and around him, the air itself seemed to distort with power. "This is One for All at its absolute limit," All Might said, and his voice carried the weight of finality. "Every reserve, every drop of strength I have left, everything." The roots weren't part of All Might's quirk. They were the 4th user's quirk, Danger Sense's predecessor in the line, a user who'd possessed a plant manipulation ability that had never manifested in subsequent holders, until now. Until All Might pushed One for All so far beyond sustainable levels that it accessed abilities that had been dormant for generations. "Toshinori, no!" Endeavor shouted. "Your body can't..." "I know," All Might interrupted calmly. "This will kill me, but if it buys you all the chance you need..." He smiled, that same bright, unshakable smile that had inspired a generation. "Then it's a worthy trade." Thanos tore through the roots with raw strength, the Power Stone incinerating the vegetation. But more grew to replace them, and more, and more. All Might wasn't trying to restrain the Titan permanently. He was buying time. "Midoriya," All Might called down. "The gauntlet. You felt how it's connected to him." Izuku, We still held by Thanos, but temporarily forgotten in the Titan's focus on All Might, understood immediately. The gauntlet wasn't just attached, it was bonded. Physically, yes, but also metaphysically through the Soul Stone. You couldn't just pull it off. You had to break the bond. And there was only one thing in this universe strong enough to disrupt the Soul Stone's connection: another soul. No, Izuku whispered, understanding flooding through him. No, All Might, please. You know what has to be done, All Might said, and his smile never wavered, even as his body began to crack, literally fracturing under the impossible strain of one for all at 200%. A hero's greatest power isn't strength, Midoriya. It's knowing when to sacrifice everything. The vestige users appeared around All Might now, invisible to everyone through some trick of one for all, operating beyond mortal limits. 8 ghostly figures, plus All Might himself, 9 generations of heroism incarnate. We stand with you, Toshinori, Nana Shimura said. Always, the first user added. All Might's body was disintegrating, turning to light as one for all consumed him from within. But he was smiling, always smiling. Young Midoriya, he said, his voice somehow carrying clearly despite the chaos. You asked me once what it means to be a hero. I told you it means being the symbol of peace, but I was wrong. His form was almost entirely light now, barely holding together. It means being the shield that others can hide behind, the hope that refuses to die, the smile in the face of extinction. All Might, Izuku screamed. It means, All Might continued. Yadra plus. Thanos' hand shot out, the reality stone glowing crimson. Enough! Reality itself bent as Thanos attempted to erase All Might from existence, to delete the problem before it could fully manifest. The Mind Stone joined in, trying to shatter the hero's consciousness. The Time Stone attempted to rewind him too before the sacrifice began. But One for All, fueled by 9 generations of accumulated willpower, was stronger than any single Infinity Stone. The two forces met in the space between moments, reality manipulation versus heroic determination given physical form. The air screamed, space fractured, time stuttered, and in that instant of cosmic clash, Thanos' grip on Izuku loosened, just barely, just enough. Izuku didn't think. He acted on pure instinct, on training, on every lesson he'd ever learned about being a hero. He twisted in Thanos' grip, ignoring the agony of his broken arm, and placed his functioning hand flat against the Infinity Gauntlet. One for All, already at 100%, surged higher. Not in the traditional sense. Izuku's body couldn't handle more physical power. He was already at his absolute limit. But One for All was more than strength. It was transferred quirks, transferred will, transferred essence of heroism. And essence could touch essence. Izuku's consciousness slammed into the Soul Stone. The experience was indescribable. He was suddenly aware of every soul in existence. Billions of lives, each one a unique spark of consciousness, each one infinitely precious and infinitely fragile. He felt the weight of Thanos' crusade, the trillion souls the Titan had extinguished across 1,000 worlds. Then he felt the mad Titan's soul itself. It was not what he expected. There was no malice there, no sadism or cruelty. Just exhaustion. Grief so profound it had calcified into philosophy. Thanos truly believed he was saving the universe, had seen his own world die from overpopulation, had watched people he loved starve because there weren't enough resources, had proposed the solution everyone called madness, and then, when his world ended anyway, had decided that he'd been right all along, just too late. You're not evil, Izuku whispered, his consciousness floating in that space between souls. You're traumatized. Thanos' presence in the soul space turned toward him, vast and ancient, and so tired. Does it matter, the Titan asked? Trauma or conviction, the math remains the same. Half of all life, or total extinction. Those are the only outcomes. No, Izuku insisted. There's always another choice. There has to be. Because if there isn't, if it really comes down to choosing who dies, then we're not heroes. We're just executioners with better PR. Then what would you do, child? Thanos demanded. What is your solution to infinite growth in a finite universe? And Izuku, drawing on One for All, drawing on the collective wisdom of 9 heroes who'd all faced impossible choices, answered with the only truth he knew. We'd find a way, together, because that's what heroes do. We make the impossible possible. In the soul space, the other vestiges appeared. All Might still holding together through sheer will. Nana Shimura, the first user. All 8 previous holders of One for All, their souls crystallized within the quirk itself. He's right, All Might said simply. We would find a way. We always have, Nana added. Thanos looked at them, 9 souls united in purpose, refusing to accept the false choice he offered. And for the first time in centuries, doubt flickered across his cosmic awareness. You're a fool, he said, but there was less certainty in it. Probably, Izuku agreed, but we're fools who won't let half the universe die without a fight. The soul space shuddered. Back in the physical world, Izuku's hand was glowing against the Infinity Gauntlet. One for All's energy interfacing directly with the Soul Stone. The other stones flickered, confused by the interference. All Might's disintegrating form took one last step forward. Midoriya, he said, his voice barely audible. Take it, all of it, everything I am, everything we are. I can't, Izuku began. So you must, All Might interrupted. One for All was always meant to be passed on, to grow with each generation, to combine quirks and wills until it became strong enough to overcome any evil. His form was almost completely gone now. Even one who believes himself righteous. All Might, young Midoriya, All Might said, and his smile was radiant even as he faded. You are already a great hero. Now, become the greatest. And with that, All Might, Toshinori Yagi, the symbol of peace, the 8th holder of One for All, released his hold on the quirk entirely. Not a gradual transfer, not a controlled passing, a complete, immediate transfer of every vestige, every quirk, every ounce of accumulated power across 9 generations. One for All at its absolute maximum flooded into Izuku Midoriya. The boy's scream could be heard across Tokyo. His body couldn't contain it, shouldn't have been able to contain it. By all rights, he should have exploded from the influx of power, but the vestiges held him together, their combined wills forming a framework that kept his consciousness intact. And the Soul Stone, confused by the presence of 10 souls occupying one body, flickered. Just for an instant. Just long enough. Izuku pulled the Infinity Gauntlet free. The moment the Infinity Gauntlet separated from Thanos' hand, reality screamed. The 6 stones, no longer unified by a single will, no longer bound to the Mad Titan's purpose, erupted in chaotic discord. Space twisted in impossible geometries. Time fractured into overlapping moments where the same second occurred simultaneously in different orders. Reality flickered between what was and what could be. Power discharged in waves that vaporized matter at the atomic level. The Mind Stone broadcast psychic static that sent everyone within a kilometer radius to their knees. And the Soul Stone pulsed once, recognizing that it had been freed by a soul touch, and went dark. Izuku hit the ground hard. The gauntlet clutched against his chest. His body was burning from the inside out. One for All at its maximum, combined with direct contact with Infinity Stones, was more than mortal flesh was meant to endure. Blood leaked from his eyes, his ears, his nose. Every nerve was on fire, but he had it. He had the gauntlet. Thanos stared at his empty hand in something approaching disbelief. For centuries, the Infinity Gauntlet had been part of him, an extension of his will, the tool through which he enacted his crusade across reality itself. And now it was gone, taken by a child who should have died a dozen times over already. Impossible, the Titan whispered. Then his expression hardened, and he lunged forward. Even without the gauntlet, Thanos was still a being who'd conquered worlds through sheer physical might. His hand closed around Izuku's throat, lifting the boy off the ground. The gauntlet clattered from Izuku's weakened grip, hitting the concrete. You've accomplished nothing, Thanos growled. You've merely delayed the inevitable. I will reclaim what's mine, and your death will... Bakugo's explosion hit Thanos square in the face. The explosive hero had finally fought his way back from wherever the Space Stone had flung him, his costume in tatters, his skin scorched from his own quirk's recoil. but his eyes blazed with absolute fury. "Put him down!" Bakugo roared, right, and unleashed a barrage of explosions that would have leveled a mountain. Thanos tanked the hits, his alien physiology far more durable than any human's. But the assault was enough to make him drop Izuku, enough to force him to actually defend himself. Shoto appeared from the opposite side, his flash freeze heat wave creating a localized temperature differential so extreme that the air itself became a weapon, superheated particles colliding with supercooled ones in a chaotic maelstrom. "Ida!" Shoto shouted. "The gauntlet!" The speedster, freed from Thanos' time manipulation when the Titan lost contact with the Time Stone, accelerated to maximum velocity. His hand closed around the Infinity Gauntlet, and he screamed. The stones were still active, still radiating power. Without a proper conduit, without a being strong enough to channel their energy, they were burning through Ida's nervous system like acid. His hand began to blacken, the flesh literally cooking from Infinity's touch. "Drop it!" Momo screamed, but Ida gritted his teeth and ran. He ran faster than he'd ever run before, his engines pushed beyond any safe limit. He ran until his legs were seizing, until his heart felt ready to burst. He ran because someone had to get the gauntlet away from Thanos, and he was the fastest person still standing. Behind him, Thanos fought through the combined assault of Japan's remaining heroes with systematic brutality. Without the stones, he couldn't simply reality warp them into submission, but he was still strong enough to tear through concrete, still fast enough to dodge attacks he couldn't see, so still experienced enough to turn their own tactics against them. Endeavor's fire was redirected into best genus carbon fibers, igniting them. Hawk's feathers were caught mid-flight and hurled back at Ryukyu. Mirko's kick was countered with a throw that sent her crashing into a support column. "You cannot stop me!" Thanos bellowed, advancing through the carnage. "I have broken gods! I have shattered worlds! I am inevitable!" A pillar of ice the size of a skyscraper erupted from the ground directly beneath him. Shoto stood at its base, his body steaming from the exertion, his heterochromatic eyes locked on the Titan with cold determination. "You're not inevitable," he said quietly. "You're just stubborn." The ice shattered as Thanos broke through, but it had bought precious seconds. Seconds for Izuku to struggle to his feet, his body held together by vestige willpower and desperate necessity. The voices of One for All's previous users echoed in his mind, not instructing, but supporting, giving him the strength to take one more step, and another. All might was gone, completely. The ninth vestige user had sacrificed himself entirely, burning away his existence to give Izuku the power he needed. The symbol of peace had made his final stand, and the world would never see his smile again. But his legacy remained. "Bakugo," Izuku called out, his voice raw. "Flashbang protocol." Bakugo's eyes widened in recognition. It was a combo they'd developed during training, one they'd never actually successfully pulled off because it required timing measured in milliseconds and trust measured in absolute faith. "You're insane," Bakugo shouted back. We've never... Now!" Bakugo didn't hesitate further. He spun, hands already crackling with his maximum explosive output, and launched himself directly at Thanos. Not to attack, to be ammunition. Izuku caught him mid-flight with One for All enhanced strength, using Bakugo's momentum. For one perfect instant, they were synchronized. Izuku's raw power and Bakugo's explosive quirk, two forces that had always competed now working in perfect unity. "Remember that time you said I'd never be a hero?" Bakugo asked, his voice surprisingly calm despite the circumstances. "Yeah," Izuku replied. "I was wrong," Bakugo said. Then Izuku threw him. Bakugo became a living missile, One for All's strength multiplied by his own explosive propulsion. He crossed the distance to Thanos in a fraction of a second, hands outstretched, it detonating with every ounce of nitroglycerin his body had produced. The explosion was apocalyptic. For the second time that day, a mushroom cloud rose over Shibuya. The shock waves shattered every remaining window within 5 kilometers. The heat was intense enough to turn sand into glass. When the light faded, Bakugo was unconscious in a crater, his arms smoking, barely breathing. And Thanos was on one knee, actually wounded, actually bleeding purple blood from multiple lacerations across his torso. The mad titan who'd conquered 1,000 worlds had been hurt by a 17-year-old with an explosion quirk and a problem with authority. "Remarkable," Thanos said, touching his injuries with something like wonder. "Without the stones, I'm vulnerable." He looked at his empty hand again, then at the heroes slowly surrounding him. I had forgotten what that felt like. "Surrender," Endeavor demanded, flames reigniting despite his exhaustion. "You've lost the gauntlet. You're outnumbered. You cannot win." Thanos actually laughed, a sound without humor, but with genuine amusement. "Cannot win? Hero, I've already won. I've proven my point." He gestured at the devastation around them. "Look at your city. Look at your casualties. Look at what it took to merely separate me from my tool. The death of your greatest hero, the sacrifice of your students, the destruction of your infrastructure." His eyes swept across the assembled heroes. "And I'm still standing." "So are we," Shoto said quietly. "For now," Thanos agreed, "but I am patient. I have crossed universes. I have endured millennia. I will reclaim the gauntlet, and when I do, I will remember this world's defiance." He began walking backward, away from the heroes, his movements slow and deliberate. "I will remember that you chose the hard way." "Stop him!" Hawk shouted, but even as he said it, he knew it was futile. They were exhausted, wounded, running on fumes and desperation. Thanos was injured but still capable of fighting. If they engaged now, more would die, and they'd already lost too many. Izuku watched the Titan retreat, every instinct screaming to pursue, to end this now, but his body wouldn't respond. One for All had been pushed to its absolute limit and beyond. He could barely stand, much less fight. "Let him go!" Nezu's voice crackled over the comms. "Ida has the gauntlet. We've secured the primary objective. Pursuit would be..." "Where is Ida?" Izuku interrupted suddenly. Where did he go with the gauntlet?" There was a pause on the comms. Then, "He's not responding. GPS shows he ran northeast before going dark. We've lost his signal." Dread pooled in Izuku's stomach. The gauntlet was burning him. He couldn't have run far. "We need to..." A massive portal opened in the sky above them. Not the Space Stone's blue energy, but something else. Something darker. Purple and black energy swirled in a vortex that hurt to look at. From it descended a fleet of ships. Not human ships. Not anything from Earth. These were vessels of alien design, their hulls covered in what looked like organic armor, their weapons already powering up with ominous red light. "No," Endeavor breathed. Thanos smiled, his first genuine smile since arriving in this universe. "Did you think I traveled alone?" he asked. "Hey, did you imagine that the Mad Titan crossed realities without resources, without support?" He gestured to the fleet. "I am patient, I am thorough, and I am never, ever unprepared." A figure descended from the lead ship, a woman whose skin was blue-black, whose eyes held no mercy, whose very presence radiated lethal competence. She landed beside Thanos with predatory grace. "Father," she said, her voice cold, "you summoned us." "Nebula," Thanos acknowledged. "I require extraction, and..." He glanced at the heroes, calculation in his ancient eyes. "Deploy the Outriders, recover the gauntlet, kill anyone who interferes." The ship's bay doors opened. What emerged defied description. Creatures that were part biological, part technological, all nightmare. They moved on four legs with disturbing speed, their bodies covered in chitinous armor, their mouths filled with serrated teeth. There were thousands of them, pouring from the ships like a grotesque waterfall. Outriders, Thanos' shock troops, the creatures he used to overwhelm planets. "Oh God," President Mike whispered over the comms. "How many?" "Approximately 50,000, Nezu estimated, his voice tight. "And we're already at the breaking point." The heroes looked at each other, saw the exhaustion, the wounds, the despair creeping in. They'd given everything to take the gauntlet from Thanos. They'd sacrificed all might. They'd pushed students to the brink of death, and now they faced an army. Izuku felt One for All flickering inside him, unstable from the emergency transfer, from being pushed beyond safe limits. The vestiges were quiet, spent from their effort. He was running on willpower alone, but he was still a hero. "Everyone who can fight," Izuku said into the comms. his voice steady despite everything. "We hold the line here. We buy time for Ida to secure the gauntlet. We don't let these things into the city." "Midoriya," Endeavor said carefully, "we're not in any condition to—" "I know," Izuku interrupted. "I know we're broken. I know we're outmatched. I know this might be the end." He looked at each hero, each student, each person who'd chosen to stand against the impossible. "But we knew that when we started, and we're still here." Shoto moved to stand beside him, ice already forming around his right hand despite his exhaustion. "Plus Ultra," he said quietly. Bakugo, somehow still conscious, somehow pulling himself out of his crater, stumbled to join them. "Plus Ultra," he rasped. One by one, the heroes rose. Was the students who should have been in class, the pros who should have been in hospitals, every person who'd taken up the mantle of heroism and refused to put it down even when it became too heavy to carry. "Plus Ultra!" they roared together, and the Outriders charged. The battle that followed would be remembered as the Shibuya Siege, the day when heroes learned the difference between fighting villains and fighting extinction. The Outriders crashed into the hero line like a living tsunami. They moved with unnatural coordination, each creature perfectly synchronized with the thousands around it, creating a mass of claws and teeth that devoured everything in its path. Izuku met them head-on. One for All was unstable, flickering between 30 and 60% in unpredictable surges. But unstable power was still power. His first punch vaporized 3 Outriders, the shockwave sending a dozen more tumbling backward. His second kick carved a trench through their ranks. But for everyone he destroyed, 10 more took its place. Shoto created walls of ice, buying precious seconds before the Outriders shattered through. Then walls of fire, incinerating the creatures but exhausting his already depleted reserves. His breathing was ragged, his movement slowing, but he didn't stop. "I can't hold them," he shouted. "Don't have to hold them," Bakugo yelled back, detonating his way through a cluster of Outriders. "Just have to slow them down." Easier said than done. The creatures were relentless. They felt no fear, showed no hesitation, and regenerated from injuries that should have been fatal. Momo created weapons as fast as her quirk allowed. Swords, spears, explosive charges, distributing them to heroes who'd lost their equipment. But even her genius had limits, and she was rapidly approaching them. Kirishima stood in Red Riot unbreakable form, using his hardened body as a literal wall. Outriders crashed against him like waves against a cliff, their claws screeching against his diamond-hard skin. But even diamonds could crack under enough pressure, and he could feel fractures beginning to form. "How long can you hold?" Tetsu shouted, standing back-to-back with him in his own metallic form. "As long as I have to," Kirishima roared back, even as an Outrider's claw finally penetrated his defense, drawing blood. Above the battlefield, Hawks coordinated aerial support with the few flying heroes still conscious. His feathers were down to maybe 20% of their normal number. Each one precious, each one counted. "Todoroki, you've got a cluster forming on your 6, Hawks called out. "I see them." Shoto spun, flash freezing the ground beneath the Outriders, then igniting it with his left side. The thermal shock shattered their exoskeletons, but more kept coming. Endeavor burned through Outriders by the dozens, his flames white-hot with desperation. But even he, the #1 hero, the man who trained himself to surpass all might, was flagging. His injured arm hung uselessly at his side. His breathing was labored, and his flames were beginning to flicker. "Fall back to position 2, he ordered. "Establish a tighter perimeter." The heroes retreated in controlled chaos, each step backward bought with blood and sweat. They'd been fighting for 17 minutes. It felt like 17 hours. In the command center, Hanezu watched the battle through drone feeds, his analytical mind calculating probabilities that grew grimmer by the second. "Casualty projections?" he asked, though he already knew. "At current attrition rates, total hero collapse in 43 minutes, an analyst reported, her voice hollow. Student survival rates after that, less than 5%. "Unacceptable," Nezu said. "Deploy?" "Sir, we've already deployed everything. Every hero who can stand is on that battlefield. We have nothing left." Nezu's paws clenched. For all his intelligence, for all his strategic brilliance, he was watching his students, children he'd sworn to protect, die because he couldn't think of a solution fast enough. Ida's position, he demanded? Still dark, no signal, no response. He could be anywhere within a 50-kilometer radius. The gauntlet. Their only bargaining chip. Their only weapon capable of actually stopping Thanos. And it was lost somewhere with a boy whose body was likely shutting down from Infinity Stone exposure. On the battlefield, Izuku felt One for All surged to 70%, then crashed to 20%. The power was eating him alive from the inside, the emergency transfer having damaged something fundamental in how the quirk integrated with his body. Every use sent lances of pain through his nervous system, but he kept fighting. An outrider lunged at his throat. He destroyed it with a Delaware smash. 3 more came from different angles. He spun, kicked, punched, each movement precise because he couldn't afford to waste energy. Each strike lethal because anything less meant death. Deku! Ochiko's voice cut through the chaos. I can't keep this up much longer. She'd been using zero gravity to create zones where outriders became weightless, easy targets for other heroes to destroy. But her quirk's overuse was triggering severe nausea, and she was vomiting between each activation. Just a little longer, Izuku called back, knowing it was a lie. There was no just a little longer. This was a war of attrition, and they were losing. Tokoyami's dark shadow had grown massive from feeding on the darkness created by the alien ships blocking out the sun. But even Ragnarok had limits, and the shadow was becoming harder to control, thrashing as much at allies as enemies. Tokoyami, pull it back, Shoji shouted, using his duplicated arms to drag injured heroes away from the shadow's rampage. I'm trying, Tokoyami screamed, blood leaking from his eyes from the strain. It's too strong. It wants to. Dark Shadow roared and surged forward, consuming a wave of outriders but also knocking aside Mineta and Sato in its fury. Everyone, scatter! Aizawa's voice cracked across the comms. The teacher had been using erasure non-stop for 20 minutes, his eyes bloodshot and streaming tears. But his quirk didn't work on the outriders. They weren't using quirks, just raw biological advantage. He could only neutralize the occasional villain-class threat that emerged from Thanos' ships. And there were many of those. A figure descended from one of the vessels, massive, covered in stone-like skin, wielding a weapon that hummed with alien energy. Cull Obsidian, one of Thanos' Black Order. The creature's eyes locked onto the hero line with predatory intent. New contact, Hawk shouted. Big one. EU Northeast Quadrant. Cull Obsidian's weapon fired. The energy beam carved through 3 buildings before Endeavor managed to intercept it with a concentrated fire blast. The collision created an explosion that threw heroes and outriders alike in every direction. That's not an outrider, Endeavor said grimly. That's an elite. How many elites does he have? Bakugo demanded. As if in answer, 3 more figures descended. Proxima Midnight with her spear that could pierce any defense. Corvus Glaive with his blade that cut through space itself. And Ebony Maw, whose telekinetic abilities made him a one-man siege weapon. The Black Order had arrived. We can't fight them and the Outriders, Best Jeanist said, his carbon fibers already fraying from overuse. We need to prioritize. We don't have the luxury of prioritizing, Endeavor shot back. We fight everything or we die. Those are our options. Ebony Maw raised his hands and the rubble of destroyed buildings began to float. Tons of concrete and steel, now weaponized telekinetically, launched at the hero line like meteors. Izuku jumped, One for All surging to 90% for one crucial moment, and punched the largest piece of debris before it could crush Momo and her team. The impact shattered his right arm, already broken, now completely useless. He landed badly, his legs giving out. Through the pain, he saw Corvus Glaive approaching, that reality-cutting blade raised for a killing strike. This was it. This was how he died. Then a portal opened between them, not the purple energy of Thanos' ships, but something else. Something familiar. Kurogiri's quirk. What? Izuku began. Through the portal stepped figures he never thought he'd see again. People who'd been imprisoned, who'd been defeated, who'd been written off as villains. Toga, her knife already drawn. Spinner with his collection of blades. Compress in his showman's outfit, and leading them, a figure Izuku recognized from the war. "You heroes," Dabi said, his patchwork skin smoking with blue flames, "are really bad at staying alive on your own." Behind him, more portals opened, and from them emerged an army of villains. Not all of them. Not the truly psychotic, not the ones who'd kill heroes for sport, but the ones who'd been offered a choice: help save the world or watch it burn with everyone in it. The Paranormal Liberation Front remnants, minor villain organizations. Even a few low-level criminals who'd been conscripted from prison with a simple question: "Do you want to live?" "What is this?" Endeavor demanded. "Amnesty program," came Nezu's voice over the comms, and there was grim satisfaction in it. "Did you think I'd let my students die without playing every card we had? I made a deal. The villains fight, we reduce their sentences. Everyone lives, or everyone dies together." "You can't be serious," and the commission president's voice cut in. "You've armed our enemies." "I've armed everyone who's willing to fight extinction," Nezu corrected coldly. "And right now, that's what matters." Dabi's blue flames crashed into Kull Obsidian, and the alien elite actually staggered from the heat. Toga transformed into Okako and started making Outriders weightless, except she didn't have the same limitations. No nausea, no mercy, just brutal efficiency. Spinner rallied a group of heteromorphic villains, their mutation-type quirks giving them advantage in close combat against the Outriders. Compress used his quirk to compress entire groups of creatures into marbles, then shattered them. The villains weren't fighting for heroism, they were fighting for survival, for the chance to see tomorrow, and that made them vicious. "This is insane," Shoto muttered, watching Dabi burn through enemies with techniques terrifyingly similar to his own. "This is war," Bakugo corrected, "and in war you use whatever weapons you have. The combined force, heroes and villains, pros and students, everyone who'd ever chosen a side now fighting together, crashed into the Black Order and their Outrider army. And for the first time since the battle began, the alien advance slowed. Not stopped, not defeated, but slowed. It was something." Izuku pulled himself upright with his remaining functional arm, one for all, crackling unstably through his body. He looked across the battlefield at the impossible alliance, at heroes fighting beside villains, at students standing with criminals. All Might had died believing in a world of simple heroism, good versus evil, right versus wrong. But maybe the real world was more complicated. Maybe survival required compromises that the symbol of peace had never been forced to make. Maybe that's what this generation had to learn. "Midoriya!" Aizawa's voice cut through his thoughts. "We've got Ida's signal back. He's 15 kilometers northeast and his vitals are critical." 15 kilometers. Through enemy territory with one working arm and an unstable quirk. "I'm going," Izuku said. "You can barely stand," Endeavor pointed out. "Then I'll crawl," Izuku shot back. "That gauntlet is the only thing that can end this. If Thanos gets it back." An explosion rocked the battlefield as Corvus Glaive's blade clashed with Endeavor's flames. The #1 hero was forced to disengage from the conversation to defend himself. "I'll create a path," Shoto said, already gathering his remaining strength for one more flash freeze heatwave. "You run, don't stop for anything." "Shoto, you'll—" "I know what I'll do," Shoto interrupted. "I've known since we started this fight. Some of us aren't making it home, Midoriya. Make sure our sacrifices mean something." Before Izuku could protest, Shoto unleashed his quirk at maximum output. The temperature differential was catastrophic. The air itself ignited on one side while flash freezing on the other, creating a corridor of pure elemental fury that no Outrider could cross. Shoto's body began to ice over from the strain, frost spreading across his right side even as his left side blistered from heat. "Go!" Shoto screamed. Izuku ran. One for all at 40%, all he could safely manage, carried him through the corridor at speeds that blurred the world around him. Behind him, he heard Shoto collapse. Heard Bakugo screaming his name. Heard the battle rage on without him. But he didn't stop. He ran toward Ida, toward the gauntlet, toward the only weapon that might save them all. 15 kilometers. Critical vitals. Thanos surely sending his own forces to retrieve the stones. Izuku ran faster. See, Izuku found Ida in the ruins of an abandoned warehouse, 12 kilometers from the battle. The speedster was barely conscious, propped against a concrete pillar, his entire left arm blackened and necrotic from fingertips to shoulder. The Infinity Gauntlet lay 3 meters away from him, as far as he'd managed to throw it before collapsing. Even from a distance, Izuku could see the stones pulsing with malevolent light, reality itself warping in their vicinity. Ida! Izuku stumbled forward, his own injuries screaming in protest. Ida, stay with me! The class representative's eyes cracked open, unfocused and pain-glazed. Midoriya, I couldn't... He coughed, blood speckling his lips. The stones, they're alive, conscious. They didn't want to be separated from him. You did amazing, Izuku said, kneeling beside his friend. You got them away. They're coming, Ida interrupted weakly. I can hear the engines, the ships. They tracked me somehow. His good hand gripped Izuku's costume. You have to take it, use it, end this. I can't use the gauntlet, Izuku said. I'm not strong enough. It'll kill me the same way it's killing you. Then we're all dead anyway, Ida said simply. His engineering-oriented mind had already run the calculations. Without the stones, we can't stop Thanos. With them, you might have a chance. 1% is better than 0. Izuku looked at the gauntlet, at the 6 infinity stones gleaming with impossible power. Space, time, reality, power, mind, soul. The fundamental forces of existence, compressed into gems small enough to hold in one hand. All Might had died getting this for them. Shoto had maybe minutes left on the battlefield. Ida was dying right in front of him. 1% chance was still a chance. Okay, Izuku said quietly. Okay, but first, he activated the emergency beacon on his costume. Medical, I need immediate evac at my location. Hero down, critical condition. Negative, came the response. All medical teams are engaged. We can't do it, Izuku roared with an authority he didn't know he possessed. That's an order. Get someone here now or Ingenium dies. A pause, then, ETA, 7 minutes. Not fast enough. Ida's vitals were dropping by the second, his breathing shallow and irregular. 7 minutes might as well be 7 hours. Izuku looked at his friend, at the speedster who'd always stood for rules and order and doing things the right way, who'd broken those same rules to save his brother, who'd just run himself to death carrying a weapon that was burning him alive from the inside out. Ida, Izuku said, thank you for everything, for being my friend, for showing me what real heroism looks like. Ida managed a weak smile. You showed me first, when you ran into that tunnel, to save Bakugo, despite having no quirk. His eyes were drifting closed. Still the greatest hero I've ever known. His breathing stopped. No, Izuku whispered. No, no, no. He placed his hands on Ida's chest and pushed one for all through them, not to attack, to restart, to force life back into a body that had given everything. The quirk surged through Ida's nervous system like electricity. His back arched. His eyes flew open. He gasped, drawing in a ragged breath. Midoriya, Ida wheezed. What? Did you? Defibrillation, Izuku said, pulling back before the power could do more harm than good. Recovery girl taught me, in case I ever needed to. He swallowed hard. 7 minutes, you hear me? You stay alive for 7 minutes and medical will get you out. The gauntlet! I'll handle it, Izuku promised. He stood on shaking legs and walked toward the Infinity Gauntlet. The closer he got, the more wrong it felt. The air around the gauntlet was distorted, reality bending under the weight of so much concentrated power. The stones pulsed in sequence. Purple, blue, red, orange, yellow, green, like a heartbeat, like they were waiting. Izuku's hand hovered over the gauntlet. Every instinct screamed at him not to touch it, that this was power no mortal was meant to wield. But what choice did he have? His fingers closed around the metal. Pain exploded through every nerve in his body. It was like touching the sun, like holding lightning, like every agony he'd ever experienced compressed into a single eternal moment. The stones awakened fully, their power flooding through him, seeking to unmake him at the atomic level. This was what had killed Ida's arm. This was what no human was designed to withstand. But Izuku wasn't just human anymore. He carried one for all. He carried the accumulated will of 9 generations of heroes. And the vestiges, sensing the crisis, surged forward within his consciousness. "Hold on," the first user said. "We're here," Nana Shimura added. Together, All Might's voice echoed, even in death. Always together. The vestiges formed a buffer between Izuku's consciousness and the Infinity Stone's power. We're not blocking it, that was impossible, but filtering it, channeling it, keeping it from completely overwhelming him. Izuku managed to get the gauntlet onto his left hand. It was too large, designed for Thanos' massive fingers. But the moment it made contact with Izuku's skin, the metal began to shift, to resize itself. The stones recognized a new wielder and adapted. The sensation was indescribable. Izuku could feel everything. Every atom in the universe. Every moment in time simultaneously. Every possible reality branching and converging. The thoughts of every conscious being screaming through his mind. The weight of every soul that had ever existed. This is what Thanos lives with, Izuku realized with horrifying clarity. This is what drove him to madness disguised as philosophy. The power was too much. It would kill him. And was already killing him, burning through his biology faster than even One for All could regenerate. "Midoriya!" Ida's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Your arm!" Izuku looked down. His left arm was blackening just like Ida's had, the flesh necrotizing from Infinity's touch. But worse than that, he could feel the stones trying to impose their will on him, to make him their instrument rather than their wielder. The Power Stone wanted him to destroy. The Space Stone wanted him to conquer. The Reality Stone wanted him to reshape existence in his image. The Time Stone wanted him to become eternal. The Mind Stone wanted him to dominate every consciousness. The Soul Stone wanted him to judge which lives had value. And underneath it all, he could feel Thanos' presence. Not physically present, but imprinted on the stones themselves. Our centuries of use had left traces of the Mad Titan's philosophy embedded in the very fabric of the gauntlet. Balance through elimination, the echo of Thanos whispered. Mercy through culling, salvation through sacrifice. "No," Izuku said through gritted teeth. That's not what heroes do." But the stones didn't care what heroes did. They were power incarnate, and power was immoral. They would do whatever their wielder commanded, but only if the wielder was strong enough to command them at all. And Izuku, for all his growth, for all his training, was not strong enough. His vision was graying at the edges. His heart was struggling to pump blood through vessels being rewritten at the molecular level. One for All was the only thing keeping him alive, and even that was failing. "You need to use them." The second user's voice cut through the pain. "Now, before they consume you entirely." "Use them? How?" Izuku gasped. "The same way All for One would," the third user said grimly. "The same way any wielder of supreme power must, with absolute conviction and willingness to pay the price." Through his fading consciousness, Izuku sensed movement, ships descending on his position, Thanos' forces coming to reclaim what he'd lost. And in the distance, through the Mind Stone's expanded awareness, he could feel the battlefield, could sense his friends dying. Bakugo's heart rate spiking dangerously high from quirk overuse. Shoto's body temperature dropping into hypothermic ranges. Tokoyami losing control of Dark Shadow completely. Heroes and villains alike being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. They were losing. Without the gauntlet, they would all die. When with the gauntlet, Izuku would die, but he could save them first. The math was simple. "Ida," Izuku said, his voice steady despite everything. "When medical gets here, tell them. Tell everyone." He raised his gauntleted hand, the stones beginning to glow with his intent. "Tell them I went out like All Might, smiling." Midoriya, no. But Izuku was already activating the stones. The Space Stone first, to teleport the Outrider army away from Earth. He could feel the vast distances between galaxies, could sense the empty void between realities. With a thought, he selected a destination, a dead universe, cold and lifeless, and began the transfer. 50,000 Outriders vanished in an instant, teleported across dimensional barriers. The strain nearly stopped his heart. Next, the Time Stone. He needed to reverse the damage done to his friends, to heal the injuries that would otherwise be permanent. He reached back through the last hour, found the moments before each critical wound, and began knitting timelines together. "Stop!" The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Izuku's consciousness, expanded by the Mind Stone, suddenly detected a presence he hadn't noticed before. Someone who'd been watching this entire battle from outside normal space-time. A figure materialized in front of him, bald, wearing yellow robes, radiating an aura of cosmic authority that made even the Infinity Stone seem to pause in respect. The Ancient One. Sorcerer supreme from another universe, drawn by the dimensional disturbances Thanos' invasion had created. "You cannot use the Time Stone like that," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Delocalized temporal manipulation is one thing, but what you're attempting, reversing injuries across multiple individuals simultaneously, will fracture the timeline beyond repair." "I have to save them," Izuku said, blood leaking from his eyes. "And you can, but not like this." She gestured, and suddenly there were others with her. Dr. Strange, Wong, other sorcerers from other realities, all drawn by the cosmic catastrophe unfolding. "We've been watching this incursion. We've seen your courage, your sacrifice. Let us help." "How?" Izuku asked desperately. "Thanos is coming. The Black Order is still fighting. My friends are dying." "Then don't try to save them all at once," the Ancient One said. "Use the stones smartly, precisely, the way a surgeon uses a scalpel, not a sledgehammer." She raised her hands, when golden mandalas of mystic energy appeared around the warehouse. "We'll buy you time. We'll hold back Thanos' forces. But you need to understand, the Infinity Stones are not meant for mortal use. Even now they're killing you. You have minutes at most." "Then I'll make them count," Izuku said. The Ancient One studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "You remind me of someone I once knew. Someone who learned that the greatest power is knowing when not to use power at all." She turned to her fellow sorcerers. "Defend this position. Whatever comes through those doors, it doesn't reach the boy." They fanned out, their magic crackling with readiness. And Izuku, alone with the Infinity Stones and minutes to live, began the most important work of his heroic career. Not destroying enemies, not rewriting reality, but saving lives, and one precise miracle at a time. Izuku closed his eyes and let the Mind Stone expand his awareness across the battlefield. He could see everything now. Every hero, every villain, every student fighting for their lives 12 kilometers away. He could feel their exhaustion, their pain, their desperate determination to survive just one more second. Bakugo, explosions growing weaker as his sweat glands depleted. 30 seconds from complete quirk failure. Shoto, body temperature at 34 degrees Celsius and dropping. Hypothermia shutting down his organs systematically. Tokoyami, consciousness fragmenting as dark shadow consumed him from within. Kirishima, hardening failing, bones breaking under Cull Obsidian's assault. Momo, creative limits reached, her body cannibalizing muscle tissue to fuel her quirk. And so many others. Too many. Even with the Infinity Stones, he couldn't save them all simultaneously without destroying the timeline like the Ancient One warned. So he had to choose. "No," Izuku thought fiercely, rejecting the idea. "That's Thanos' philosophy. That's what he wants. For me to become like him, to decide who deserves to live." "Then what will you do?" the Vestiges asked. Izuku opened his eyes and they glowed with the combined light of 6 Infinity Stones. "I'll save them all," he said, just not the way he would. Instead of reversing time or rewriting reality, Izuku used the stones with surgical precision. The Space Stone to relocate, not eliminate. The Time Stone to slow, not reverse. The Reality Stone to heal, not reshape. The Power Stone to energize, not destroy. The Mind Stone to coordinate, not dominate. The Soul Stone to preserve, not judge. He teleported Bakugo out of Cull Obsidian's path, placing him beside a water tower where he could cool his overheated hands. Used the Time Stone to slow Shoto's hypothermia to a crawl, buying him minutes to recover. Gave Dark Shadow a localized reality shift that made it semi-corporeal, allowing Tokoyami to regain control. Reinforced Kirishima's molecular structure with the Power Stone, just enough to prevent fatal injury. Fed energy directly into Momo's cells, restoring her creative capacity. One by one, he performed miracles. Not grand, reality-breaking displays of power. Small mercies, precise interventions, the kind of heroism that saved lives instead of taking them. But each use cost him. His left arm was completely black now, dead tissue hanging from his shoulder. The necrosis was spreading, across his chest, up his neck. The Infinity Stone's power literally burning him away. He had minutes left, maybe less. Outside the warehouse, Thanos' forces arrived. The Black Order descended on the Ancient One's position with overwhelming force. Ebony Maw's telekinesis clashed against mystic shields. Proxima Midnight's spear shattered mandalas of golden light. Corvus Glaive's blade cut through dimensional barriers. But the sorcerers held. Dozens of them from across the multiverse, united in protecting one boy who'd chosen to use infinite power to save rather than destroy. "You cannot reach him," the Ancient One declared, her magic forming an impenetrable sphere around the warehouse. "Not while we still draw breath." Ebony Maw laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Then we shall remedy that." The battle between sorcerers and the Black Order shook reality itself. Spells that rewrote the laws of physics collided with alien technology that ignored those laws entirely. Neither side would yield. Inside his protective bubble, Izuku worked faster. He could see Endeavor now, the #1 hero making a final stand against the Outriders' renewed assault. The man's flames were guttering out, his body pushed beyond any reasonable limit. Pride and determination kept him standing, but that wouldn't last much longer. Izuku used the Reality Stone to transform the rubble around Endeavor into fuel. Literal combustible material that his quirk could ignite. Not much, just enough to keep the flames burning a little longer. Endeavor felt the sudden influx of power and looked around in confusion. Then understanding crossed his face. Somewhere, somehow, Midoriya had the gauntlet, and he was using it to save them. "So, all units," Endeavor's voice cracked across the comms with renewed authority. "Young Midoriya is supporting us. Whatever he's doing, it won't last. We push now while we still can. For All Might, for the symbol of peace, or for Japan." The heroes rallied, finding reserves of strength they didn't know they possessed. But Izuku could feel his consciousness fragmenting. The stones weren't meant to be used this way. Gentle, precise, saving instead of destroying. They fought against his intent, wanting grand displays of power, wanting to solve problems the way Thanos would. Absolute, final, devastating. "Just eliminate them," the stones whispered. "End the threat permanently. Use the Power Stone to vaporize the Black Order. Use the Reality Stone to unmake Thanos. You have infinite power. Use it." "No!" Izuku gasped, blood now leaking from every orifice as his body failed. That's not who I am." "Then you'll die," the stone said matter-of-factly, "and your friends will die after you." Maybe, but he'd die a hero, not a god who decided which lives mattered. He saved Jiro from an Outrider's claws, teleported Kaminari away from Proxima Midnight's spear, gave Aizawa's eyes a moment of relief from the agony of overused erasure, stabilized Best Genus damaged vocal cords, reinforced Hawk's remaining feathers. Small miracles, dozens of them, hundreds, each one bringing him closer to death. "Midoriya!" Ida's voice cut through the haze. The speedster had managed to crawl closer, despite his injuries. "You have to stop. You're killing yourself." "I know," Izuku said simply. His vision was almost completely gone now, and the stone's power burning through his optic nerves. "But if I stop, everyone else dies, so I keep going." "That's not a choice. That's suicide." "It's heroism," Izuku corrected gently. "All Might taught me that. The greatest hero is the one who saves everyone, no matter the cost to themselves." Through the Mind Stone, he could feel All Might's vestige stirring, the symbol of peace's presence within One for All, watching what his successor had become. "Young Midoriya," All Might's voice echoed in his mind. "I'm so proud of you, but I never wanted this. Never wanted you to have to make this choice." "I know," Izuku whispered, "but you did make this choice. So did all the previous users. You all gave everything to save others. I'm just continuing the tradition." "Then let me help one last time." Izuku felt something shift within One for All. The vestiges were moving, consolidating, using what remained of their presence to form a final buffer between Izuku and the stone's killing power. They couldn't stop his death, but they could slow it, buy him minutes instead of seconds. "Thank you," Izuku said to them, to all of them. The heroes who'd come before, who taught him what it meant to sacrifice everything. Outside, the Ancient One's shields were cracking. The Black Order was breaking through, their assault relentless. The sorcerers were falling one by one, overwhelmed by sheer alien brutality. "We can't hold much longer," Wong shouted, his hands weaving defensive spells, even as Corvus Glaive's blade sliced through his shoulder. "You must," the Ancient One responded. "The boy needs—" Thanos himself descended from the sky. Without the gauntlet, he was still terrifying, a being who'd conquered 1,000 worlds through raw might. He landed with enough force to crater the ground, his eyes locked on the warehouse where Izuku sheltered. "Enough," the Titan said quietly. "Your resistance has been admirable, sorcerers. But this ends now. Return what is mine, and I will spare your lives." "We are the guardians of reality," the Ancient One said, standing despite her injuries. "We do not negotiate with those who would break it." "Then you will die with it." Thanos moved with impossible speed for something his size. His fist connected with the Ancient One's mystic shield and shattered it like glass. She flew backward, hitting a wall with bone-breaking force. The other sorcerers attacked as one. Spells of every color and description converged on the Titan. Binding magic, disintegration curses, dimensional banishment, reality anchors. Thanos walked through them all. Without the stones, he couldn't simply reality warp away threats, but he didn't need to. His body was dense enough to shrug off magic that could level mountains. His will was iron enough to resist mental attacks that had broken gods. His experience was vast enough to predict and counter every technique they tried. In 30 seconds, every sorcerer was down. Thanos approached the warehouse, each step measured and inevitable. "Midoriya," he called out, "I can feel you in there. I can sense the stones responding to you." He stopped at the entrance. "You're dying. I know the signs. I've worn the gauntlet for centuries. You have minutes at most before the power consumes you entirely." Inside, Izuku could barely hold consciousness. His body was more dead than alive, kept functional only by the vestiges' desperate intervention and the stones themselves. But he was still using them, still saving people, still being the hero All Might had believed he could be. "Come out," Thanos said. "Return the gauntlet, and I will end your suffering quickly. Your friends will be spared. Half of humanity will survive. It is the best outcome you can hope for now." Izuku didn't respond. He was too busy teleporting Ochako away from an Outrider pack, too focused on healing Kirishima's shattered ribs, too determined to give Tokoyami the strength to maintain Dark Shadow just a little longer. "Very well," Thanos said. The Titan's fist punched through the warehouse wall like it was paper. Then another hole, and another. Systematically dismantling the building, bringing it down around Izuku's position. Ida tried to shield his friend with his body, but he was too weak. The speedster could only watch as Thanos carved a path toward them. Finally, the Titan stood over them both, looked down at Izuku, a 17-year-old boy being eaten alive by power he should never have touched, still using it to save people he'd never met, still refusing to surrender even as death claimed him. For the first time since arriving in this universe, Thanos felt something approaching respect. "You could have used the stones against me," the Titan observed. "Could have erased me from existence, or banished me to another dimension, or simply stopped my heart. Instead, you used infinite power to perform medicine." He shook his head slowly. "Foolish. Admirable, but foolish." Izuku managed to crack open his ruined eyes, while meeting Thanos' gaze. "Not foolish," he rasped. "Heroic. There's a difference." "Is there?" Thanos asked. "You're dying for people who will forget you within a generation. I'm reshaping reality to save civilizations for millennia." Which of us is truly the hero? The one who doesn't choose, who lives and dies, Izuku said. Blood bubbled at his lips. The one who saves everyone or dies trying. Then you will die, Thanos said, and reached for the gauntlet. Izuku's right hand, his only functional limb, shot out and grabbed Thanos' wrist. The stones flared to life at the contact, not attacking. Izuku wasn't using them to hurt the Titan. Instead, he was using the Soul Stone to do something no one had ever done before. He was showing Thanos himself. The Soul Stone opened a window between their consciousnesses, and suddenly Thanos could see through Izuku's eyes, could feel what the boy felt, could understand the conviction that drove him to sacrifice everything. The Titan saw Izuku's memories. A quirkless child told he'd never be a hero. A boy who'd broken his body 1,000 times learning to wield inherited power. A student who'd watched friends die in a war they were too young to fight. Someone who'd been given every reason to be cynical, to be cruel, to decide that some people weren't worth saving, and who chose heroism anyway, every single time. You could have been powerful, Thanos said quietly, still locked in the soul connection. Could have ruled this world. Instead, you chose to serve it. Not serve, Izuku corrected, his voice growing weaker. Protect. There's a difference. The Soul Stone pulsed one more time, while showing Thanos something else, a vision of two futures. In one, Thanos reclaimed the gauntlet, snapped away half of humanity, achieved his goal, and spent eternity wondering if the boy had been right, if there had been another way, if his trauma had blinded him to better solutions. In the other, Izuku died here. The gauntlet was destroyed or lost. Thanos was forced to leave Earth without completing his mission, and he spent eternity knowing he'd been bested by a child who refused to accept that mercy required murder. Neither future was victory. Both were failure, just different kinds. You've shown me your soul, Thanos said. Now I'll show you mine. And through the connection, Izuku saw Titan, saw Thanos as a young philosopher proposing solutions no one wanted to hear, saw his world die anyway, proving him right too late, saw him transform from idealist to fanatic, convinced that if he just had enough power, he could prevent others from experiencing what he'd endured. Saw a person who'd turned trauma into crusade, grief into mathematics, love into genocide. You're not evil, Izuku whispered, understanding flooding through him. You're broken, and you broke the universe trying to fix yourself. For just a moment, Thanos' expression cracked. Just for an instant, the Mad Titan looked tired. Then his hand closed fully around the gauntlet, and he pulled. The gauntlet didn't come off, not because Izuku was holding it. The boy was too weak for that now, his body more corpse than person, but because something else was holding it. One for All itself had fused with the Infinity Stones. The quirk, 9 generations of accumulated willpower, and 8 vestiges and All Might's sacrifice, had intertwined itself with the gauntlet at a metaphysical level. The stones recognized what One for All truly was: transferable heroism, power that existed solely to protect others, the antithesis of everything Thanos represented. What? Thanos pulled harder, his immense strength straining against something that shouldn't have been able to resist. What have you done? I didn't do anything, Izuku gasped. The quirk chose. It always chooses heroes. Through the Soul Stone's connection, still active, Thanos felt it. Felt the presence of 9 heroes who'd each chosen to pass their power forward rather than hoard it. Felt their collective judgment of him. And for the first time in centuries, the Mad Titan heard a word he'd forgotten existed. No, not spoken aloud. Wired impressed directly into his consciousness by the vestiges themselves. They looked at Thanos, this being who'd murdered trillions in the name of mercy, and rejected him absolutely. You are not worthy, the first user said. You never were, Nana Shimura added, and you never will be, All Might finished. The Infinity Stones began to glow, but not with Thanos' intent, with theirs, with One for All's accumulated heroism channeled through 6 cosmic singularities. Thanos felt the power he'd wielded for centuries turning against him. No, he said, no, the stones answer to strength, to will. I am inevitable. I am... You're alone, Izuku whispered. And in that moment, the fundamental difference between them became clear. Thanos had conquered alone, had sacrificed alone, had made his terrible choices in isolation, convinced that only he could bear the burden of saving the universe. But Izuku had never been alone. He'd been supported by All Might, taught by Aizawa, befriended by his classmates, saved by heroes and even villains who'd chosen to stand together against extinction. The stones recognized that difference. Power that served one will versus power that served everyone. A crusade versus a collaboration. Tyranny versus heroism. The gauntlet made its choice. It rejected Thanos. The Titan's hand was blown backward by a pulse of pure energy. He staggered, shock written across his face for the first time since arriving in this universe. "That's impossible," he breathed. "The Infinity Stones don't choose. They simply are. They're part of the universe," Izuku said, and somehow found the strength to sit up. And the vestiges were sustaining him now, using One for All itself as a lifeline. And the universe wants to live, wants everyone in it to have a chance. Not just half, everyone. Thanos looked at the boy who should have been dead a dozen times over, still clinging to life through sheer heroic conviction. "You're killing yourself for people who will never know your name," the Titan said, "for a philosophy that cannot sustain itself. Infinite growth in a finite universe is mathematically impossible. Your heroism changes nothing." "It changes everything," Izuku countered, "because even if you're right, even if the math says we're doomed, we'll face it together. We'll find solutions together. And if there are no solutions," he met Thanos' eyes, "then we'll die together. But we won't murder half the universe and call it mercy." Behind Thanos, the battlefield had fallen silent. Heroes and villains alike had stopped fighting, sensing something cosmic occurring. They couldn't see what was happening in the warehouse, but they could feel it, reality itself holding its breath. Endeavor stood among the rubble, his flames finally extinguished. "What's happening?" "Midoriya," Bakugo said, his voice rough with exhaustion and something else. Pride maybe, or grief. "He's doing something with the gauntlet. I can feel it. That bastard's actually—" He didn't finish. Didn't need to. In the warehouse, Thanos took a step backward, then another. "You cannot win," he said, but there was uncertainty in it now. "Even if the stones reject me temporarily, I have my armies. I have the Black Order. I have time and resources and experience beyond your comprehension. And I have something you don't," Izuku said. "What?" Izuku smiled. That same bright, unshakable smile that All Might had made famous. The smile that said hope would always triumph over despair. "I have people who believe a better world is possible." He raised the gauntleted hand, and all 6 stones blazed to life simultaneously. Not to attack, not to destroy. To do what Izuku had been doing all along, just on a cosmic scale. The Space Stone opened portals across the battlefield, teleporting every Outrider back to Thanos' ships. Not killing them, removing them. The Time Stone accelerated healing across every injured hero and villain, giving their bodies hours of recovery in seconds. The Reality Stone transformed the destroyed sections of Shibuya, and restoring buildings and infrastructure. The Power Stone fed energy into Earth's heroes, renewing their strength. The Mind Stone coordinated them all, creating perfect tactical awareness without controlling their thoughts. And the Soul Stone did something Thanos had never considered. It showed everyone, every hero, every villain, every person watching across the world, exactly what Thanos had done across the cosmos. Showed them the trillion souls he'd extinguished. Showed them the civilizations he'd saved through genocide. Showed them what he truly was. Not a savior, a traumatized being who turned his pain into universal suffering. The reaction was immediate and absolute. Every human on Earth looked at Thanos and saw him clearly, saw past his philosophy to the broken person underneath, and they chose unanimously to reject him. "No," Thanos said, feeling the weight of an entire planet's judgment. "No, you don't understand. I'm trying to save you. I'm trying to—" "We don't want your salvation," Endeavor said, his voice carrying across the silent battlefield. "We want our freedom to succeed or fail on our own terms." Even if failure means extinction? Thanos demanded. Even then, Shoto said, pulling himself upright despite his injuries, because a free death is better than enslaved survival. One by one, the heroes spoke. Not rehearsed, not coordinated, just individuals choosing to stand against the Titan's terrible mercy. You don't get to decide who lives, Bakugo snarled. You don't get to choose what we're worth, Momo added. You don't get to make our choices for us, Ida said from the warehouse, his voice weak but firm. Thanos looked around at them all, at the heroes who'd fought beyond their limits, at the villains who'd chosen survival over anarchy, at the students who'd faced cosmic horror and refused to break, at Izuku, who'd wielded infinite power and used it to heal rather than harm. You're all fools, Thanos said quietly. You'll destroy yourselves within generations. Maybe, Izuku agreed, but it'll be our choice. Our mistake to make, our future to build or burn. The Titan was silent for a long moment. Then, the gauntlet is bonded to you now. The stones have chosen their wielder, but you're dying. The power is consuming you. You have minutes at most. I know. Then what will you do in those minutes? Kill me? Destroy my fleet? Reshape reality to eliminate anyone who threatens your world? Izuku shook his head. I'm going to do what heroes do. I'm going to make sure everyone has a chance at tomorrow. He raised the gauntlet one final time, and the stones blazed with the full might of One for All, channeled through cosmic power. The Space Stone opened a portal, not to another part of Earth, but to another universe entirely, to wherever Thanos had come from, home. Go, Izuku said simply. Take your fleet, take the Black Order, take your philosophy of necessary genocide. Go back to your own reality and leave ours alone. You're letting me live? Thanos asked, genuine surprise in his voice. After everything I've done? After I've killed countless beings across countless worlds? Killing you would be justice, Izuku said. But it wouldn't be heroism. Heroes save everyone, even the villains, even the monsters, or even the ones who don't deserve it. He coughed, blood spattering his lips. All Might taught me that. You get one more chance, Thanos. Use it better. The Titan stared at this boy, this dying, foolish, impossibly heroic boy, and felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Shame. He'd murdered trillions to save civilizations. And a 17-year-old with a second-hand quirk had shown him what actual heroism looked like. You'll regret this mercy, Thanos said, but there was no conviction in it. Maybe, Izuku agreed, but I'd regret becoming like you more. Thanos looked at the portal, at the way home, at escape from this universe that had rejected him so completely, then back at Izuku. The gauntlet will kill you, the Titan said. Even if you remove it now, the damage is done. Once your body has been fundamentally altered by the stone's power. You're living on borrowed time. I know. Then why? Why sacrifice yourself for a world that will forget you? For people who will squander the second chance you've given them? Izuku smiled again, that same bright smile even as his body failed. Because that's what heroes do. We don't save people because they deserve it. We save them because they need it. Because everyone deserves a chance, even if they waste it, even if they forget, even if it kills us. He paused, his breathing labored. Even you. The words hung in the air. Thanos, the mad Titan, who'd broken worlds and shattered civilizations, felt something crack inside him. Some fundamental certainty that had sustained him through centuries of bloody crusade. What if the boy was right? What if there had always been another way? Thanos started, then stopped. I don't know how to be what you are. Then learn, Izuku said gently. You have infinite time. Use it to find better solutions, to help instead of harm, to build instead of balance through elimination. He gestured to the portal. Go, before I change my mind. Thanos took one step toward the portal, stopped, turned back. What is your name? He asked. I should know the name of the one who defeated me. Izuku Midoriya, the boy said. Hero name, Deku. Deku, Thanos repeated. He inclined his head, just slightly but unmistakably, a gesture of respect. You have shown me something I thought lost forever. Thank you. Then the Mad Titan walked through the portal, followed by his fleet, his Black Order, his outriders. Well, the entire invasion force that had nearly destroyed Earth retreated through the dimensional gateway. The portal closed behind them, and Izuku Midoriya collapsed. The Infinity Stones, no longer needed, no longer actively used, began to dim. One for All, having served its final purpose, started to fade. The vestiges, their energy completely exhausted, began to disappear. "You did it, young Midoriya," All Might's voice echoed one last time. "You became the greatest hero." "I learned from the best," Izuku whispered. Medical teams were rushing in now. Recovery Girl appeared with her cane, her elderly face tight with professional focus despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. Heroes gathered around, watching as the boy who'd saved them all finally let go. "Somebody do something," Bakugo screamed, his voice cracking. "He's dying." We can't just..." "Ka-chan," Izuku said softly. "It's okay." "It's not okay. You don't get to die. Not after everything. Not after..." "You'll be a great hero," Izuku interrupted. "Greater than me, because you'll learn from my mistakes." He managed to look at all of them, his friends, his rivals, his teachers. "All of you will be amazing. The world needs you." "We need you," Shoto said, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. Izuku smiled. "You have me. Always. One for all. It's more than a quirk. It's a legacy. It'll find a new user, someone worthy, and they'll carry on what we started." His eyes were closing. Recovery Girl was working frantically, but even her quirk had limits. The damage from the Infinity Stones was too fundamental, too complete. "Midoriya," Endeavor said, and the #1 hero's voice carried authority and sorrow in equal measure. "You saved us all, saved the world. You're a true hero." "Just did what All Might taught me," Izuku breathed. "Plus, Ultra." His hand, the gauntleted one, began to glow one final time. The stones activated on their own, responding to Izuku's dying wish. Not for himself. Never for himself. The Soul Stone pulsed, and suddenly everyone could feel it. The essence of who Izuku Midoriya had been. His kindness, his determination, his absolute unshakable belief that everyone deserved to be saved. That essence spread across the world like gentle light, touched every person who'd watched the battle, every hero who'd fought, every villain who'd chosen survival over destruction, every civilian who'd hoped against hope. It didn't change them. No, it didn't force them to be heroic, but it reminded them what heroism could be, what it should be. Izuku's final gift, the inspiration to be better. Then the light faded, the stones went dark, and Izuku Midoriya, the boy who'd inherited All Might's dream and made it his own, breathed his last. The symbol of peace had fallen, but his legacy would endure. 3 months later, Tokyo stood rebuilt. The scars of the invasion had been erased through the combined effort of heroes, reconstruction companies, and volunteers who worked tirelessly to restore what had been destroyed. Where Shibuya had burned, new buildings now reached toward the sky. Where streets had cratered, smooth pavement welcomed pedestrians once more. But some scars couldn't be erased so easily. In the center of what had been the battlefield, they erected a monument, simple and elegant, a statue of a boy in a hero costume, his hand outstretched not in violence, but in offering, in help. The plaque at its base read, "Izuku Midoriya, Deku." The hero who saved everyone every day. People came to leave flowers, to pay respects, to remember the student who'd faced a cosmic god and chosen mercy over vengeance, even at the cost of his own life. Bakugo stood before the statue now, alone in the early morning light. He'd visited every day since the funeral, never speaking, just standing there with clenched fists and eyes that couldn't quite cry. "You were supposed to surpass All Might," he said quietly to the stone figure. "Not become him, not sacrifice everything like he did." His voice cracked. "Damn it, Deku. We were supposed to compete, supposed to push each other to be better. How am I supposed to do that when you're..." He couldn't finish. Footsteps approached from behind. Shoto carrying his own flowers, half red, half white. He stood beside Bakugo without speaking, the two of them sharing grief they couldn't articulate. "He changed everything," Shoto finally said. "The Hero Commission is restructuring. New protocols for student safety, mandatory mental health support for pros. Even the villain rehabilitation programs got expanded funding." He placed his flowers at the statue's base. All because one person proved that heroism means saving everyone, even when it's impossible. "He proved more than that," came a new voice. They turned to see Endeavor approaching, out of costume for once, looking older than either student had ever seen him. The former #1 hero had retired after the invasion, stepping down to make room for younger heroes who embodied Izuku's ideals better than he ever could. "He proved that power isn't about strength," Endeavor continued. "It's about choice. Midoriya had infinite power, literally infinite, and chose to heal instead of harm, to protect instead of punish." He looked at his son. "I spent decades thinking the opposite, thinking might made right. He was 17 and understood what took me a lifetime to learn." More people were arriving now. Ochako and Ida, both still recovering from their injuries but alive. Momo and Kirishima, Tokoyami and Tsuyu. One by one, Class 1A gathered at the monument to their fallen classmate. "The gauntlet disappeared," Momo said softly. "The day after Midoriya died, the Infinity Stones just vanished. Like they'd served their purpose and returned to wherever they came from." "Good," Bakugo said harshly. "Nothing that can do that to a person should exist." "But something good came from it," Ida added, his voice still weak but gaining strength. "One for All survived. The quirk transferred before Midoriya died, passed on to someone new, someone worthy. They all knew who. The commission had kept it quiet, but word had spread among the students. A young hero in training from a different school, someone who'd witnessed Izuku's final stand and felt the call of one for all seeking a new bearer. The legacy continued. In the sky above, a news helicopter captured footage of the memorial gathering, broadcasting it across Japan and the world beyond. The anchor's voice carried over the images. 3 months ago, humanity faced extinction. An alien being with the power to unmake reality itself offered us an impossible choice: surrender half our population or be destroyed. We chose neither. We fought, and one hero, one student who should have been in class, showed us what it truly means to be heroic." The broadcast cut to footage from that day. Izuku, barely alive, wielding the Infinity Stones not to destroy Thanos but to save everyone, villain and hero alike. The moment he'd sent the Mad Titan home instead of killing him, the final smile before his sacrifice. "Izuku Midoriya could have been the most powerful being in the universe," the anchor continued. "Instead, he chose to be the most heroic. His legacy lives on in the heroes he inspired, the villains he redeemed, and the world he saved. Today, Japan remembers. The world remembers. And we promise we will be worthy of his sacrifice." At UA High School, in the principal's office, Nezu reviewed applications for the upcoming semester. Double the usual number, tripled interest in the hero course. Every single applicant's essay mentioned the same inspiration: Deku, the boy who'd proven that true heroism wasn't about power, but about choice, about using whatever strength you had, whether it was a quirk, a weapon, or just your own determination, to protect others, to offer hope, to refuse the easy answers, even when they cost everything. "All Might's legacy survives," Nezu said to Aizawa, who sat across from him, looking older and more worn than ever. "Through young Midoriya, and now through whoever carries One for All next." "It's not enough," Aizawa said bitterly. "One boy shouldn't have had to make that choice. And we should have protected him better. Should have." "We should have many things," Nezu interrupted gently. "But what's done is done. All we can do now is honor his memory by being better, by building the world he died to protect." In the 1A classroom, Izuku's desk remained empty, a small shrine of flowers and notes left by students who'd been inspired by his example. The space felt sacred somehow, a reminder of what they'd lost and what they still fought for. Bakugo sat at his own desk, staring at the empty seat where his childhood friend had once sat. The friend he'd bullied, mocked, told would never be a hero. The friend who'd become the greatest hero any of them had ever known. "I'll surpass you," Bakugo thought fiercely. I'll become so strong that your sacrifice won't be in vain. I'll protect everyone, just like you did. I'll be the hero you believed I could be." It was a promise he'd spent his entire life keeping. Across the world in another universe, Thanos stood on a dead planet and stared at the stars. He'd returned to his own reality as commanded, his invasion force intact, but his philosophy shattered. For centuries, he'd believed that balance through elimination was mercy, that killing half to save half was logical, necessary, inevitable. Then a 17-year-old boy with a second-hand quirk had shown him what actual mercy looked like, what heroism truly meant, and Thanos couldn't unknow it. "Perhaps," he said to the empty cosmos, "there is another way." He didn't know what that way was yet, didn't know how to undo the damage he'd done across 1,000 worlds. But for the first time in longer than he could remember, he wanted to try, and then wanted to be worthy of the mercy he'd been shown. In the My Hero Academia universe, as the sun set over Tokyo, the statue of Izuku Midoriya caught the last rays of light. The stone figure seemed almost alive in that golden glow, hands still outstretched, still offering hope even in death. And across the city, across Japan, across the world, people looked at that statue and remembered that one person could make a difference, that heroism wasn't about power, but about choice, that sometimes the greatest victory was refusing to become what you fought against. Izuku Midoriya had faced a god and won, not through strength, but through conviction, through an absolute, unshakable belief that everyone deserved to be saved, even the monsters, even the villains, even the cosmic tyrants who'd murdered trillions. When he'd wielded infinite power and used it to heal, he'd been offered the choice between impossible victory and noble defeat, and chose a third option: sacrifice. He'd become the symbol of peace that the next generation needed, not perfect, not invincible, but human, flawed, real, and all the more heroic for it. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the lights of Tokyo blazed to life. A city saved, a world preserved, a future still possible. All because one boy refused to give up on humanity, even when the universe itself seemed determined to prove him wrong. Somewhere, in whatever afterlife awaited heroes, Izuku Midoriya smiled. His work was done. But the story of heroes who fought for everyone, who never gave up, who believed in a better tomorrow, would continue. Plus Ultra, forever.